Holy crap.
People persist in doubting the evidence.
Don't run and hide. Don't be afraid. Don't turn away any longer. The truth will set you free. You're listening to Jimmy Church Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
We're putting all of our antennas towards Jimmy Church on Dark Matter Radio.
And now, your host, the captain of conspiracy, the prince of paranormal. This ain't your daddy's radio network show. This is Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Ha! Oh! What do you know? Getting in the mood. Getting in the mood. All right, everybody, fade to black. Bespoke radio for the masses. Today's Monday, September 8th. 250 days into the new year for those of you like Rick that use a Gregorian calendar. We are live from the JP Motorsports Studios right here in Burbank, California. Burning hot. You saw what's going down at Magic Mountain. Talk about that in a bit. For KJCR and the Dark Matter Radio Network, I am your humble host, Jimmy Church. Welcome back. I hope everybody had a great, relaxing weekend. We had the Rick Sinnott family unit in from Las Vegas. Lost wages. Pretty good cookout. Pretty cool family. Had a great time. Katie. His son came in here. Took him over to the studio. Sits down, starts hitting buttons. The next thing you know, he's broadcasting to the world. Welcome, everybody listening all across the United States, all around the world, back and forth, to and fro, hither and thither, up and down, far and near, east and west, north and south. I'm going to start naming latitudes. Let's get this one cracking. We got a good one today. Big salute to the proud men and women in uniform all around the world. That's right. Protecting that Constitution. Putting it all on the table every single day. Think about that. Freedom of speech. The show today is a perfect example of freedom of speech. It's going to be great. Graham Hancock, live from the UK. The bottom of the hour. This one with Graham, we've been putting this show together now for 3 months. Back and forth. We got it. It's all good. It's all good. Tonight, Graham Hancock, live. And, okay, I'll say this. We're going to talk about it, I'm sure. Maybe I don't know what's going to happen, so maybe I should just mention this in advance. We're going to have Graham back in 2 weeks. That's right. We're going to do back-to-back shows. And there's a reason for that. There's things that he will disclose with us for the first time in a couple of weeks. And we're going to, he's buttoning down stuff. So where we go tonight is where we go. You know the drill. And then we are going to have a back-to-back show. And I cannot wait. So, with that, man, I've got like sweaty palms. I'm nervous. Oh, man. Graham Hancock tonight and Kevin Randall on the same show. Man. Oh, all right. Oh, we've got a bunch of stuff I need to get out of the way before we bring in Graham. And first off, yes, I spent the weekend shooting, and I wasn't, I couldn't say anything before that. I can say a little bit now. The pictures that were released were the releasable pictures. So there's a bunch of other stuff. Anyway, yes. There's a series that has been shot and will be shot and will continue to be shot that will be airing here pretty soon. And when we get around to the reason why, okay, everybody, the reason why I can't really talk about things right now because it's just not quite finished. They've got other stuff that needs to be done with it. So when it's ready, and it won't be too long, a couple of weeks, then we'll do all the formalities at that point and the premiere and everything. So, but yes, you're going to see my fat ugly mug. It's going to be pretty cool. Makeup does wonders when you have a face for radio, and so I think we'll be okay. It's exciting. It's really cool stuff. The concern is, and I've been watching this, and I've gotten email. I've been seeing the post. It's okay. Fade to Black isn't going anywhere. This show, the series is shot, or will be shot when the show isn't broadcasting. Okay, it's that simple. We've made those arrangements. So no, I am not going into TV. No, radio's my home. The Fadernauts are my family. Okay, so everybody just relax. It's going to be cool though. Can't wait. And see, I know what it is. It's going to be cool. All right, so let's get this one cracking. Now that I got that out of the way. Today, is this right? I'm looking here. Somebody better double check this. Is this right? Today is Chumley's birthday from Pawn Stars. How cool is that? Gold and silver pawn in Las Vegas. Chumley. Love that show. Oh, man. I've got all of anybody in Vegas, because I don't know when we're going to get out there again. If anybody can go by Gold and Silver Pawn and pick me up like a triple XL T-shirt, I'll pay you humbly for a Chumley. Chumley, happy birthday, brother. All right, our dead guy birthday today is actor Peter Sellers. Yep, born in 1925, died in 1980. And who can forget, he portrayed Group Captain Lionel Mandrake, President Merkin Muffley, and Dr. Strangelove. In Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb, filmed by Stanley Kubrick, one of my favorites. Hey, Rick just posted pictures of Brennis, his son, here at the studio yesterday. Pretty cool. I'm telling you what, kid's got a future in broadcasting. Just sits down in the studio, grabs the mic, swings it around, looking at the screen, starts pressing buttons, and then next thing you know, he's on the network. Great kid. Stanley Kubrick, and also all of the Pink Panther films. Probably one of my favorite actors, but those two films, especially the first Pink Panther and Strangelove. One day I'll do my top 10. Let's do this really quick. Let's do this really quick on Twitter. Welcome everybody on Twitter. I see that everybody is here. Eugene is in the house. Eugene is here. We now can have a show. I feel at one with the universe, just so you know. What is everybody's, I want to know, the number one, the greatest film of all time? Simple enough. Greatest film of all time. I have a tie. Okay, but yours. Let's see this on Twitter really quick. All right? Everybody, I don't know. Is everybody just going to go Godfather? Is everybody going Godfather? 2001: A Space Odyssey? If somebody's going to reach outside of those two films, I want to know. Well, if it's Godfather, if it's 2001, whatever it is, Star Wars, whatever it is, The Red Violin, well done. It's a great movie. That's a great movie. Barry Gordy's The Last Dragon. Wow. Okay. All right, so let's get that flying by. Maltese Falcon. That's Gone with the Wind. Yep. Scarface. Yep. Dances with Wolves. The Eagle Has Landed. Robert Knoll, You the Man. That's a great flick. Patton, great flick. What about The Longest Day? That's up there. Saw. Michael K. Oh, man. Today, live from England, Graham Hancock. Later on tonight, Kevin Randall. Follow us on Twitter, @JChurchRadio, #DMRadioNet. Come hang out with the Fade or Not family, and let's just light it up tonight. I'm going to open up the lines later on with Kevin Randall, like we always do. I think this is Kevin's, such a great friend of the family here. This is probably his third, maybe fourth appearance this year. Love Kevin. Should have had him on Roswell week. We just couldn't squeeze him in, so I thought we'd do him one today. Email throughout the show, Jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. And you can go over to the Facebook or go over to the website and post there too as well, if you want to do so in confidence. Okay, a couple of things before we get to the first break. A couple of comments. Number one, got a bunch of email about Jack the Ripper. And yes, I did see the breaking news. And let's see here. Hold on. Here it is. This is this came in from MC. He says, "Hi, Jimmy. Hope everything is well. I love Fader Night. The name is perfect that you finally picked for Thursday's show. Here's an article about Jack the Ripper. And based on this new info, it would be nice to have a show on this. Not up there on the priority list, but let's do it someday. As for a guest request, I want to suggest Peter Davenport, good call, or John B. Wells again. I would like to get John back on the show. Back to Jack the Ripper. Yeah, there's some kind of DNA. I read everybody's emails on this. Some DA evidence came in that was on a scarf or a shawl from one of the victims. And it was connected to either somebody of Polish descent, I think it was. But that was one victim with one DNA connection. And how solid this is, we're going to find out. But I'm looking now to possibly get that researcher on the show. Okay? And now, tomorrow night, we're going to hit this first break. Tomorrow night, without giving it away, but tomorrow night, radio history is rare. There's a few things that went down. You had, most of them were with Art Bell, it seems, but, you got the War of the Worlds, Orson Welles, 1938. Yeah, radio history, absolutely. You have that broadcast from Roswell, radio history. Love listening to that. And then you have a couple of things that went down with art. And one of them, wait a minute. There was a few seminal moments with art with callers. And tomorrow night, I need you to think about that for a second. Tomorrow night, I'm going to have one of those guys on the show. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And I'm so excited about this. And speaking with him today on the phone, when I got the email, and it's a friend of a friend, but it's a small world. It really is a small world. And when I spoke to him today, I was like, wow, it is really you. I said, tonight is Graham Hancock and Kevin Randall on the show tonight. And I just want to get to tomorrow. Just wait. This is Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. We are only on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. It's what you want to do. Hashtag DMRadioNet. Shoot me an email to jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. I've got a bunch to get to before we get to the bottom of the hour with Graham Hancock. I'll be back right after this. Stay with us.
You're listening to Jimmy Church Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
What's up, revolutionaries? It's me, Jimmy Church. Do you have an IRS or state tax issue? Well, I did, and I called national tax experts. My problems were fixed, done, fini, and man, I got to tell you, it was a relief. National Tax Experts are a recognized tax office that services clients in all 50 states. It doesn't matter where you live. Give them a call. I'm telling you, they take the time to understand each and every client's individual financial status as well as their financial goals. And that's exactly what you need, my brother, when you're taking on the evil three-letter. So, seriously, give them a call today at 1-877-909-5444. Again, 1-877-909-5444, or go check out their website, www.nattaxexperts.com. That's NATTAXEXPERTS.com. Tell them Jimmy sent you.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
On the Dark Matter Radio Network.
Yeah, Fade to Black. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. Only on the Dark Matter Radio Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Graham Hancock. Just a few minutes. We're gearing up for that right now. Kevin Randall, a little bit later. And tomorrow night, oh, you just got to love a tease like that. That's just not right. Bob Gimlin, that would be good. Darren, I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that. I'm not sure about Paulides, though. I have to buy his book to bring him on the show. All right. Stanton T. Friedman, as everybody knows, tweeted everybody today, tweeted the show, tweeted Nancy, tweeted everybody. He's back. He's good. And he said, thank you for, well, let me see. He said, I said, great to see you back. He said, and it's good to be back. Stan. Just awesome. Awesome. And also on Saturday, everybody, I spoke to Dr. J, John Elias, and he's out of the hospital. He's good. Feet are on the ground. He's back. And we got Clyde Lewis back. So it's all good. It's all good. We've got everybody back and reporting to duty, and it's very, very important to us all. And it was just great to hear from Stan, great to hear from Dr. J, great to hear from Clyde, and to have everybody down all at once. Oh, who was posting this? Oh man, Rick and I sword fighting in the Casa de Church kitchen yesterday. There you go. Check it out on Twitter right now at JChurchRadio. Those are kebab skewers, but certainly, definitely a deadly weapon. Over at JimmyChurchRadio.com, if you go over, we have a new Fadernauts page with your artwork. It's so cool. You should go check it out. It's right there. It's called Fadernauts. You guys have your own page now. And the Michael Wemming picture that he did of yours truly, man, he's one of the best comic book artists in the world. That guy's just incredible. Very humbling, so humbling. It's just, but anyway, we're going to get that picture up there too. I want to get it up in high res. He just sent us the high res files today, but it's yours truly fighting the good forces, man, or the bad forces for good. It's pretty cool. It's I'll let you be the judge. It's pretty cool though. All right, couple of other emails really quick. Man, the hour is just flying by. Let's see here. This is from Jean D. Jr. Jean. He says, just wanted to leave. It could be Jean, but it's a junior. So is it Jean? Is it Jean? Is it Jean? Just wanted to leave you the following comments. Number one, the lack of critical thinking is a greater threat to our country and the world than any terrorist group. Number two, I love your show. You seem to have a genuine, non-politically motivated agenda to report and discuss events not covered in mainstream media. Thank you, and I'll certainly keep listening. Thank you, Jean. This came in from Renee. 1 minute, 45-second director's cut of the TV commercial for Dior perfume. And she sent it because she says that she is, it's already there. Okay. Sorry about that. I've got text coming from the left and from the right. I don't know whether to be horrified that Whole Lotta Love is now in a mainstream TV commercial, or to appreciate its appropriate pairing with an upscale men's perfume and sit back and enjoy the magnetism and eye candy provided by Robert Pattinson and French model Camille Rowe. Led Zeppelin held back for years, did not allow their catalog to be played in anything, and would not sell out. And if my memory serves me correct, the only time that Led Zeppelin cowered was in Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And as a matter of fact, a mistake happened because he says, well, the famous scene when he says, you know, you need to listen to side 2 of Led Zeppelin 1, or you need to listen to side 2 of Led Zeppelin 4, whatever it is. But then another track comes up from like Physical Graffiti or Led Zeppelin 3. Because they couldn't, what they wanted to play, they couldn't get. Right? You understand? Led Zeppelin just doesn't do it. And here it is. And I'm with you. I don't know whether to enjoy it or not. I did go and watch the, it's a pretty good commercial, actually. So let's see. What else do we have here? Oh. Check this out. The Colossus at Magic Mountain caught fire today. And I put up the pictures on Facebook. I say I, it's we. Put up the pictures on Facebook. The Colossus caught on fire. And the Colossus is one, it was built in, well, it was here when I got here. So must have been built in the 70s. And it's an old wooden roller coaster. Now, it's pretty fast, and it's pretty noisy, too. And I think at one point it was like the fastest and longest. But every roller coaster claims that. The Beast at Kings Island and so forth. But it was, yeah, Kashmir, Dave C. Yes, you are currently featured. The Immigrant Song is currently featured in the video game Destiny. Yeah, you know, I guess they're selling out. When it was such a, Led Zeppelin was such a untouchable thing. You had to play the album if you wanted to listen to it. Now it seems like when the floodgates are open. But anyway, the Colossus caught on fire today, and the peak, the first drop off, you know, the first drop, that what is it? The apogee, is that the right word? The top of the arc is burnt through. It was on fire, and I'm bummed. I had heard earlier this year that they closed Colossus down and they were going to do some repairs on it and open it up, in time for next season at Magic Mountain. Now I'm not so sure. And I've got some great memories on that roller coaster. And when you go to Magic Mountain, either they have all that modern stuff, Superman, Batman, all these crazy rides now, but it's still Colossus that it's got that feeling and it's smooth. It's like when it's so mechanical, when you have the wood and the metal and the grease, there's something that happens there. And it's like an old watch. It's just so cool. The new stuff it's fun. It's all right. You get sick and it's cool. But there's nothing like that. And I really hope they don't tear it down. Now, over on the Fader Night Gallery, by the way, when you go there, there's a quote in the middle of the page. It says, "In Gene we trust." You got to go check that out. Greece, as it turns out, may have found the tomb to Alexander the Great. Now, one of the fantastic things with my family, I have a very international family. And so when you go over to my in-laws' house, there is, on the air, you'll have Greek television, Armenian television, Russian television, and one sentence over at my in-laws' house will have English, Greek, Russian, and Armenian all in one sentence. You can kind of pick your way through a conversation if you know a little bit of any one of those languages. Anyway, but what they do over there is they watch all of the international news. And the international news that comes out of Athens or Yerevan or Moscow, the news is different than what we get over here. Just like BBC. BBC is totally different than what you get on CNN, Fox, MSNBC, whatever. But they are reporting over there that possibly they have found the tomb of Alexander the Great. Now, the tomb itself was initially discovered. They didn't know what they had in 2012. Now, the digging found these two really cool statues that represent royalty. Now, the conundrum of Alexander the Great and his tomb and where he was buried, was it in Egypt? All of these, we just don't know. It's never been found. But it looks like it's leaning towards possibly we have found the tomb of Alexander the Great. And you've got to go look at the pictures. They're pretty fantastic. Now, there's another tomb off of this main tomb, and they're suspecting that this, not main tomb, there's two tombs, I should say, but the one that they are in right now, it looks like it could be a family member of Alexander the Great. How cool would that be? Now they're freaking out on what this other tomb is, and it looks like they're getting ready to go into it, that it may be even bigger and grand than where they are now. Stuff like this happens very, very rarely in a lifetime. And this is just so exciting to see this go on. So anyway, okay, I think we're getting close. Yes, we are. We are getting close. Yes. Okay. With that, a couple of minutes, we will have Graham Hancock on with us. Later on tonight, Dr. Kevin D. Randall. I don't know if it's Colonel, if it's Doctor, or if we just call him Kev. I have no clue. But when I do come back, we will have Graham Hancock with us right here on Fade to Black. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. Think about it. This is Fade to Black, only on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Shoot me your emails right now, Jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. Come hang out with us on Twitter. When I come back, Graham Hancock, live from the UK. I'll be back right after this. Don't touch that mouse.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
Dark matter.
Dark Matter. Dark Matter. Dark Matter. Dark Matter. Dark Matter.
You're listening to Fade to Black
on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Bespoke radio for the masses only on the Dark Matter Radio Network. You want to follow us on Twitter tonight at JChurchRadio. That's the real one. Hashtag DMRadioNet. All right, I'm ready. He is ready. Let's get this one cracking. Graham Hancock is the author of the major international bestsellers The Sign and the Seal, Footprints of the Gods, I own it, and Heaven's Mirror. His books have sold more than 5 million copies worldwide and have been translated into 27 languages. His public lectures, radio and TV appearances, including 2 major TV series for Channel 4 in the UK and the Learning Channel in the US, Quest for the Lost Civilization and Flooded Kingdoms of the Ice Age, have put his ideas before the audiences of tens of millions. He has become recognized as an unconventional thinker who raises controversial questions about humanity's past. Born in Edinburgh, Scotland, Hancock's early years were spent in India, where his father worked as a surgeon. Later, he went to school and university in the northern English city of Durham and graduated from Durham University in 1973 with a first-class honors in sociology. He went on to pursue a career in quality journalism, writing for many of Britain's leading newspapers, including The Times, The Sunday Times, and The Independent. He was co-editor of the New Internationalist magazine from 1976 through 1979 and East Africa correspondent of The Economist from 1981 to 1983. In 2005, Graham published Supernatural, Meetings with the Ancient Teachers of Mankind. It was an investigation of shamanism and the origins of religion. This controversial book suggests that experiences in altered states of consciousness have played a fundamental role in the evolution of human culture, and that other realities, indeed parallel worlds, surround us all the time but are not normally accessible to our senses. While researching Supernatural, Hancock traveled to the Amazon to drink visionary brew Ayahuasca, the vine of souls, used by shamans for more than 4,000 years. It was his experiences with the vine that led to his latest work, Entangled. Written with the same page-turning appeal that has made his nonfiction so popular, it tells the story of a supernatural battle of good against evil fought out across the dimension of time on the human plane. This weekend, September 12th through the 14th, Graham will be right here in Southern California, out in Joshua Tree, at the Synchronicity Symposium. All right, I would like to welcome to the program. It's very early in the morning there. Thank you, Graham, for getting up with us. I'd like to welcome to the program Graham Hancock. Graham, how are you, sir?
I'm fine. I didn't even go to bed. Nice to be with you.
You're going round the clock, huh?
You bet. Yeah, 24/7. That's me.
You're going to be a couple of days. You're going to be stateside. Looking forward to it. I'm going to try to get out to Joshua Tree to hang out, but you're going to be stateside in a couple of days. When was the last time you were here?
Last time I was in the States was in November of 2013. and I get over fairly often. Have some family in the States. As a matter of fact, three of my 6 kids are in the States. One is in Los Angeles, one is in New York, and one is in Baltimore.
We're in Burbank, and
Right.
you're going to be so close to us. We've got to try to shake hands while you're here and take advantage of the opportunity. So you're going to be in Joshua Tree, and you're going to be out there with Mr. Sheldrake. And
That's right.
When was the last time you guys hung out together? And we're going to get to that in a second. But when was the last time you guys hung out?
Well, as a matter of fact, the last time we hung out, apart from one meeting at a kind of event or a party, the last time we hung out was when we both presented at the controversial TED conference in London in January 2013, after which we both got banned from TED.
Can we talk about TED?
Yeah.
Okay, let's put the gloves on, so to speak. I've been to one TED conference down in Long Beach, and uptight maybe is the way that I would describe it sometimes, but I'm sure your definition is a little different. But after you guys were finished, after you left the stage and you did your 18 minutes, was there a vibe walking off of the stage?
Well, the vibe was very positive at that time. See, this was a TEDx conference, so it was organized by a group of very switched on, very idealistic young students in London who were operating under the TED franchise. I didn't even know that TED used concepts like franchise at the time, but it does, a bit like Starbucks. It kind of licenses people to use its name.
Right.
And gives them the backup of their facilities. But then it also wants them to behave in a TED-like way, and this is where the problem came, because neither Rupert Sheldrake nor I behaved in a TED-like way in the talks that we gave. Our talks were very politically un-TED, if you like, and we didn't know, and the students didn't know. See, before this happened, I didn't know much about TED. I'd seen a few TED talks on the net. I thought they were really good. I thought they were embracing open-minded ideas, and I was very pleased to be invited to go speak at a TED event. And I thought, it would be a very good place to express my sometimes controversial ideas. But I couldn't have been more wrong, because it's both Rupert and I crossed a line, which is a kind of invisible line that TED has drawn. TED feels that since they're this huge, gigantic franchise, they actually have to protect their audience from improper thoughts, rather like a sort of big brother. And the thoughts that both Rupert Sheldrake and I were expressing were, according to the TED Bible, improper, because we were expressing a view about the subject of consciousness. Actually, both our talks were very different.
Yes, they were. They were. I don't mean to cut you off,
right.
Except both of you guys were banned, so to speak, for, it wasn't like you guys were talking about the same subjects. And I've watched both presentations many times. And his was more of the black and white hardcore scientific dogma, and for you it was the exact opposite. It was more about consciousness.
Rupert was attacking the black and white scientific
dogma. Right.
This is where he crossed the line, partly because neither of us realized that TED are in fact scientific dogmatists who adhere to a very specific. There are many broad-minded people in science, but there's a faction within science which, best term for it is materialist reductionist faction, which seeks to reduce everything to matter and to what can be weighed, measured, and counted. And it's that faction that runs TED's ideology. So to present a lecture as Rupert did that was critical of that kind of science was entering very dangerous territory. And my lecture, in fact, what both his lecture and my lecture had in common was that we considered what's called a non-local view of consciousness. In other words, that consciousness may not be generated, made by, manufactured by the brain. Consciousness may, we just possibly, be received or transceived by the brain. The role of the brain in consciousness is not fully understood, and it may not be that the brain is making consciousness, it may be that the brain is receiving consciousness, and that would explain all kinds of anomalous phenomena like telepathy, for example, or even the survival by consciousness of physical death. And considering those ideas provoked a horrified reaction from Ted's Church of Progress.
But what is wrong with
Can I pause
that?
for 1 second, because my wife's here and I'm going to get those earphones and just make sure we don't have any echo. Bear with me 1 second.
You got it.
Santa.
This is great. He was texting me during the, I don't know why I'm whispering. He was texting me saying, Jimmy, my wife's home. She has the headphones in her purse. Is it okay if and I texted him, I said, no, man, we're doing the interview, but I want my headphones. She's here. I left a note on the door. Okay. Oh, hold on. All right. So you got some headphones plugged in. Sounds much better.
Plugged in the headphones should have better sound.
What is wrong with that kind of idea? With Ted, it's about expressing ideas and being different, and that's all the both of you were trying to express. Why would it offend?
Well, exactly. This is why we were so taken aback when they suddenly deleted our talks from their YouTube channel, because it had never occurred to us that Ted wouldn't embrace open-minded thinking on the nature of what is, after all, probably one of the greatest mysteries of science, which is what human consciousness is all about. Most mainstream scientists will accept that they have not fully explained the nature of consciousness, but it's as though at the heart of the TED enterprise, there's something almost like a religious faith in materialism, that everything may be reduced to matter, that there are no mysterious explanations for things, that there is no such thing as non-physical realms. This is the idea which we discovered later is at the heart of TED's secretive science board, because they have a board of scientists whose names they will not divulge, who, after TEDx talks have gone live, go through the talks, vet them, and decide that some of them must not be heard by the public. And it's really rather sinister in a way. It's a bit like the Vatican in the 15th century, and very surprising in an institution like TED. But there it is. We'd crossed the line. We'd suggested that consciousness might not be manufactured by the brain. Of course, there's a relationship between consciousness and the brain, but that relationship might be more like the relationship of a TV signal to a TV set than of a generator making electricity, to use an analogy. And that went again against a fundamental dogma of TED's science. And what it did was it revealed that this supposedly bright and cheerful, open-minded organization is in fact, in its heart, extremely dogmatic and ruthless, and operates, I think, rather like the Vatican, rather like a church. And it gets rid of ideas that don't fit with its dogma. And it therefore decided to get rid of us. But it didn't take account of the internet. It didn't take account of the fact that people out there in the world today want to think for themselves, don't want to be told what to think by some large organization like TED, want to have the privilege of making up their own minds about things, and absolutely were infuriated that TED had simply taken these talks offline. And as a result, loads and loads of people independently uploaded the talks. We made it possible for them to do so, and they did, and the talks are now uploaded all over the internet. They've spread virally, and TED's objective to shut us up completely backfired on them. And in the process, it exposed this dark underbelly of TED, that it isn't really this super open-minded organization at all. It's a very closed and limited perspective that it endorses.
The very foundations of TED, all of their members, the very foundations are based on the lessons that we learned with what the Vatican did in 1500.
Yeah.
And the very and you would think that that's exactly what they would be against. And it's definitely direct censorship. And then you're absolutely right. The motives of pulling you guys down and banning you, that's what we want to see. Oh, okay. They banned from TED?
Yeah.
That,
they just didn't take that into account at all, that the internet hates censorship.
Right.
The internet can't bear it. And then TED tried to spin it. They had such a massive shockwave of reaction that they then put the talks back, not on YouTube. They've never put them back on YouTube. But they put them back in a very hard-to-find corner of their website, which Rupert rather nicely calls the naughty corner. So we were put in the naughty corner on TED, and then they raised this kind of bogus discussion. Let's discuss why it was right for TED to take Hancock and Sheldrake offline. And after 2 or 3 weeks, they closed that discussion and refused to allow it to happen anymore. And they hoped in this way that they would be able to say they hadn't censored us. Yes, they took us off YouTube, but they put us back in an obscure corner of their website that you couldn't search on Google. That was their defense, that they hadn't censored us. But I believe it was plain, absolute down-to-earth censorship that we suffered from with TED. And I'm very glad that it backfired upon them. And it shows the spirit of the age that we live in, that you really can't behave in this secretive way. And you certainly can't behave in this secretive way and pretend at the same time that you're being open.
Do you think TEDx now has to submit all of the talks to Chris Anderson now before anybody hits the stage?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure how they do it, but I would hope, since TED do operate this practice of censorship, that they would actually be bothered in that case to check talks through before they upload them, because it's very distressing for a speaker to put all that effort into a talk, to have the talk appear online, and then for it suddenly to be just vanish, for it just to disappear like that. It's a kind of judgment on you. And I think people who speak at TEDx conferences should know that they run this risk, that TED may take them offline later when its science board have got off their asses and got round to listening to the talk. They may actually take you offline at that point, and that is part of the deal. Well, I hope TED have changed, but I don't believe they have.
So what are you and Rupert going to present together? I just said Rupert like I know him. Rupert Sheldon. Are you guys going to present together and discuss this out in Joshua Tree as well, publicly for the first time?
Absolutely. Publicly for the first time. We're going to be on a panel together to discuss all of this and all of its implications for mind control and freedom of thought in our society today. We're, of course, giving separate, independent presentations. Rupert's giving 3 presentations. I'm giving 3 presentations. But we're going to sit together on a panel with the audience and go through all of this in detail, because it actually raises a very important point. We live in a society today that pretends to be free, that pretends to, under the guise of democracy, to allow people to think what they want. But in fact, the opposite is true. Our society is massively in the business of mind control, and particularly in the business of consciousness control. I regard this as one of the great acts of human rights abuse that our society commits, which is that it, in fact, does not allow adults to be sovereign over their own consciousness. There are certain decisions about our own consciousness that we are not allowed to make in our society, including, for example, the decision to use psychedelics. This is a personal decision undertaken in the privacy of one's own home, doing no harm to others, but it can, in fact, land you in prison for up to 30 years. And that means that what our society is objecting to is adults changing their state of consciousness from the regulated, accepted alert problem-solving state of consciousness of our society into another state of consciousness that may be more questioning or more threatening to the status quo. This all gets lumped together under the so-called war on drugs, and people just take it for granted. A lot of taxpayers' money is put into prosecuting the war on drugs, but I see it as a war on consciousness. I'm not advocating that people should go and take all kinds of drugs, but what I am saying is that, like health decisions, the decision about what we do with our own bodies and our own minds, so long as we do no harm to others, is a private, personal decision of the adult. And the state has no place in that, and large institutions and large organizations have no place in that, and they should get out of our heads. I feel that very, very strongly, and I feel that this is an area where change is needed. I'm glad to see in America, state by state, that the absurd prohibition of marijuana is being rolled back. In this sense, America has a kind of real democracy that countries like Britain don't have, because in America, people can vote with their feet, and they are overturning this federal restriction on adults smoking marijuana state by state. I believe close to 23 states now either have medical marijuana or have decriminalized marijuana, or in a couple of cases have actually made it completely legal, as it should be, because this is a decision for individual sovereign adults to make. It's not a decision for the state to make. It's not a decision for large corporations to make. And I think it's a symptom of a much wider problem in our society, where we have allowed these big institutions to creep into the inner sanctum of our consciousness and really control what we think, beaming all kinds of messages to us through television and through the education system, totally whitewashing us really as to the truth in many cases when it comes to the mainstream news media. And I think the big change that we're going to see in the coming years is a kind of revolution really against this, that people are just not going to put up with that bullshit any longer.
When you think about it, the 70s, high schoolers, and what I mean by that is this, that was 40 years ago now. So that means all of the state legislatures, all 50 of them, Washington, D.C. in general, Congress, everybody now, the old school, that generation is gone. It is our generation that occupies all of the seats in politics across this country.
Exactly.
And every single politician has puffed. I'm sorry. It is such a hypocritical view. There is just no way. I don't know if it's 100%. I don't know if you can find that guy or girl that positively was never exposed to it, but they all have. And to have that position today is completely hypocritical.
It's totally hypocritical. And even if they never did have a puff on a joint, even if they never did that, it's none of their bloody business what you or I do.
And they know that.
This is the crucial thing. And this is why what is actually, often presented as a rather unimportant issue is, I think, a very important issue. It's a litmus test for the kind of society we live in. Do we live in a society that allows adults to make sovereign decisions over their own health and their own consciousness? Or do we not? And if we don't live in a society that allows adults to make those sovereign decisions, then in fact we live in a very sinister, controlling, and dangerous kind of society. And that's what this whole issue is revealing, and that's what state by state is being rolled back in the United States, but not yet in many other countries. It's a very interesting time that we live in, and very important changes are coming up.
You have a very large dedicated following, very large, and we commend you for that. I mean, you speak so well, you write so well, and we love it. But have you had anybody just write you and go, Graham, you need to slow down on this stance?
Yes, lots of people do. I'm probably better known for my work on the issue of civilization, the possibility of a lost civilization, of mysteries in our prehistory, and less well known for my interest in consciousness and in altered states of consciousness. And I think many of my traditional readers who have been interested in my work on the possibility of a lost civilization have been a bit frightened away by the perhaps rather radical position that I take on adult sovereignty over consciousness. But what I try to answer to them is that the same open mind that considers the possibility of a lost civilization must also consider the possibility that consciousness is a great mystery, and that we need to be looking in a very open-minded way at this mystery of consciousness. And one of the ways we can do that is through the intelligent, responsible, respectful use of psychedelics. There are not many other tools with which consciousness can be altered radically at will. But psychedelics, they can be. A psychedelic like dimethyltryptamine. We have the amazing work of Dr. Rick Strassman at the University of New Mexico in the 1990s, where he administered DMT to human volunteers, and where extraordinary experiences were recorded, which seemed to testify to the existence of freestanding parallel realms. Now, if that's the case, quantum physics embraces the idea that there might be other realities, other parallel universes in a theoretical way. But suppose it was possible actually to investigate and explore those universes, not by building some kind of machine, but by changing the receiver wavelength of our own brains. That's the radical suggestion at the heart of Rick Strassman's work at the University of New Mexico.
That's right.
Which work was stopped after a few years because it didn't fit in to the standard therapeutic model. But to me, this is very exciting work. It's work we should be doing. In addition to all kinds of other science, we should be exploring the mystery of consciousness, and we should recognize that psychedelics are an incredibly effective way to do that. And again, I want to emphasize, I'm not advocating the irresponsible use of psychedelics. I'm saying that this is a very serious matter. The decision to use psychedelics is an extremely serious matter. It is a matter for adults, not for children. But when an adult has thought the matter through, has investigated it thoroughly, and decides that he or she wants to work with psychedelics, our society should nurture and make that possible, rather than terrorizing us with fear and threatening us with prison sentences in order in order to do that. Because the evidence is, as you go back into prehistory, Terence McKenna, of course, was one of the early exponents of this view, but there are a number of academics like David Lewis Williams at the University of Witwatersrand in South Africa who have shown that the emergence of humanity into fully symbolic behavior was undoubtedly mediated by the use of psychedelics. There's a certain moment in our prehistory, about 40,000 years ago, when our ancestors suddenly start to make spectacular, amazing art, just incredible art. They haven't done that before. They've been very boring before that. And then they just suddenly start making this amazing art. And when you examine the art in detail, you find that it is an art of visions. It's exactly the same kind of art that volunteers in research done in the 60s and 70s were painting after their experiences with LSD or psilocybin. And therefore, although we can't go back and interview those Stone Age artists, it's pretty obvious from their art that it was indeed the Stoned Age, not just the Stone Age, and that it accompanied a huge leap forward in the evolution of human behavior. So to rule these substances out and to demonize them and to send people to prison for using them may actually be a very dangerous thing for our society to do. And I think it happens, again, because of the issue of mind control, because there are vested interests in our society that just don't want people to think for themselves at all. And those vested interests include the big pharmaceutical companies, which, of course, do make billions and billions of dollars a year from drugs that do alter consciousness. Drugs like, I don't know, Seroxat and Prozac, the antidepressants, or drugs like Ritalin are all consciousness-altering drugs, but they alter consciousness in a way that doesn't cause the person taking them to question the existing order. And that's perfectly okay. Our society encourages that, even though there's a huge downside to these pharmaceutical drugs. But plant agents that have been in human culture for tens of thousands of years, and which have had an extraordinary part in the human story, are presently demonized and criminalized, and it's dangerous for our personal security as regards the state to take them, because if we do take them, we may find the state breaking down our door, confiscating our property, and putting us in prison for 30 years.
Your conviction and stance on this is well, I'm going to visit that in a second. You're going to join us again in a few weeks, and we're going to really get deep. And I look forward to that. But I just have one direct question. The first time, your first experience with, well, I want to say DMT, but ayahuasca,
Mm-hmm.
the very first time,
Yeah.
was it just, oh no, this is a life changer? I mean, what?
Well, let me tell you about that, because the very first experience that I had with any psychedelic was many, many, many years ago. It was in 1974. I was 24 years old, and I was at what was called the Windsor Free Festival in England, just outside of London. I actually regard 1974 for me as the official end of the 1960s.
Okay, I'll go with that.
and I had never taken a psychedelic before. I was there with a group of friends, and I was given an acid tab, and I took it. And I spent the next 12 hours in Wonderland. I just had the most amazing, incredibly powerful experience. It felt like I had traveled back in time. This whole setting of the festival, which, by the way, was violently broken up by the police the next morning. When I saw the police advancing through the wheat fields in a line, I actually thought they were a line of dancing pixies. I didn't realize initially what they were with their truncheons, but I experienced this kind of time travel. I found myself in a sort of Viking or Anglo-Saxon encampment. I had an incredibly exciting, very, very powerful journey into a period of the past. It really did feel like time travel. When I came out of that acid trip the next day, after about 12 hours, it was as though a door had closed suddenly, and I was suddenly back on planet normal. And I actually thought, my God, if that had gone the other way, if that had been powerful in a negative way, I don't know what would have happened to me. And that idea so scared me that for many, many, many years, I never touched a psychedelic again. For many years. It wasn't until the early 2000s when I began to research a book that I wrote called Supernatural, Meetings with the Ancient Teachers of Mankind, which investigates shamanism and altered states of consciousness, that I realized I had to have these experiences, because I was talking about that moment when our ancestors suddenly started to make cave art, and the art was an art of visions. And I began to research the subject, and I found that people in the Amazon had shamans who were taking this incredible brew called ayahuasca, and who afterwards would paint their visions. And I realized I had to go to the Amazon, and I had to drink ayahuasca, and I had to have that experience if I was going to write authentically about it. So I went down to the Amazon, and I had 11 initial journeys with ayahuasca, some of them in the middle of the Amazon jungle, absolutely incredible, life-changing experiences. And from then on, I've continued to drink ayahuasca every year. I have 5 sessions with ayahuasca every year over a 2-week period, because I have found it to be of absolutely fundamental importance to me, to show me how to be a better person, how to be a more nurturing, more positive person, less of an arrogant, self-focused person, I hope, than I used to be. And to show me that reality is very mysterious and very complicated, and that it is not limited at all to this material and physical realm.
You've always, and I've listened to you speak about this so much, you speak about ayahuasca almost in the first person, like it is a person.
Yes, that was one of the things that got me into trouble with TED, because I talked about Mother Ayahuasca. which is the way that many people in the West, particularly who drink ayahuasca, have come to encounter what we construe. I have to make this clear. I can't prove that I'm right about this. This may all be a projection of my own mind. I admit that. But if it is, it's a projection of multiple other minds as well. There's a tendency to encounter a spirit or an intelligence behind the ayahuasca brew. And she almost always appears in female form. And very often, you know she's female, but actually she takes the form of a serpent. You can imagine how fundamentalist Christians react to that.
Right.
Or a jaguar, one or other of those two animals. And she's a teacher. She's regarded as a teacher in the Amazon to teach us life lessons about ourselves. And the first thing that happens to you very often in the ayahuasca journey is that you get shown episodes from your past life, and you get shown how you actually behaved, not how you have persuaded yourself that you behaved. All the illusions are stripped away, and you suddenly see your behavior in the honest truth, and you realize that your behavior may not have been all that nice at all, and that you need to do something about it, and you need to change it. These are valuable life lessons. And for me, it's a bit like, I suppose, what must have been for the ancient Greeks, like encountering a goddess. I'm not claiming she is a goddess. I'm not claiming that she's even real. I'm just saying that's how I experience this spiritual intelligence that lies behind the ayahuasca brew. And it's a very odd thing, really, if you think about it, that you take two plants that grow in the Amazon jungle, cook them up with water, drink the resulting brew, and suddenly find yourself communicating with a disembodied intelligence who wants you to be the best you can possibly be. I mean, you can't make that stuff up. It's very, very extraordinary, but my experience is not unique. Tens of thousands of people in the West who've drunk ayahuasca have had this kind of experience and have had their lives changed by it. So something's going on. I sometimes wonder if it's to do with the horrors that our society is inflicting on the Amazon jungle today. If this is the way of the Amazon jungle to get back, to speak to us, to address our consciousness, to break through the mind control that our society is operating upon us.
We'll get into this deeper when you come back, but is it very consistent? You know, can you go right back to the same point and pick up where you left off? And I guess what I'm asking, it's not a different experience every time. You can go right where
you can. But it can be a bit hit and miss. We're dealing with a brew here. As I say, it's made of two different plants in the Amazon. One they call chacruna, the leaves that contain the dimethyltryptamine. The other is called ayahuasca, which is the vine itself. The vine contains a monoamine oxidase inhibitor that switches off an enzyme in our stomachs, thus allowing the DMT in the leaves to be absorbed. That in itself is an amazing bit of ethnopharmacology, since there's 150,000 different species of plants and trees in the Amazon.
Right.
But we're dealing with a plant product here, and inevitably the brew can vary in its consistency and in its strength from session to session. And if you underdose on the brew, you will not plunge deeply into parallel realms. On the other hand, if you have too much, you may plunge much more deeply into those parallel realms than you wish to do. I always remember my friend of mine, Luis Eduardo Luna, Colombian who lives in Brazil, who I frequently drink ayahuasca with, was a great friend of Terence McKenna. He knew Terence way back from 1973. And he tells a story about Terence and mushrooms. It seems that Terence was taking mushrooms one day, but they weren't hitting him quite. He wasn't getting there. He wasn't strong enough. So, he ate quite a bit more mushrooms. And then suddenly the experience kicked in and the universe began to melt down around him. And then a voice said in his ear, "Is that strong enough for you, asshole?" It's like that with ayahuasca. Sometimes you can have too much. Sometimes it's just utterly overwhelming and full on and can be terrifying. It's a little bit difficult to graduate the experience. But in specific answer to your question, very often you find that the lesson you got on the previous session is being picked up in the next session, that the entities you encountered before are back. There's a consistency. A lot of people in the Amazon describe it as a school. It's like a school where a series of lessons are going to be given to you. And if you don't get the lesson, then you have to go back and do it again.
Do you have? You would have to have you have to have somebody with you to guide.
I believe it's essential to have somebody with you. I recently had just the last few days, people have been writing to me on the internet because somebody is selling ayahuasca on the internet. And well, first of all, I have to emphasize, I take the view that adults must be free to make sovereign decisions over their own consciousness. But we're also free to advise one another. And I would advise anybody considering buying ayahuasca on the internet and drinking it at home, my advice to you would be, please don't do that. That is not a good idea. That is a very bad idea. Part of the situation with psychedelics, particularly with powerful psychedelics, is what is called the set and the setting. This is just as important as the substance itself.
Right.
And what shamans do is they create a safe, nurturing space in which you can drink ayahuasca. And shamans are those practitioners who have been again and again into that other world and who have learned how to negotiate and deal with the forces that operate there. Therefore, they can aid you and help you in your journey. And that aid and help is a very important part of the process, in my view. I was a scuba diver for many years. I would never have gone scuba diving solo in my first 2 or 3 years as a scuba diver. That would have been quite a lunatic thing to do.
You wouldn't be here right now speaking to me.
I wouldn't be here right now and speaking to you if I had. You know, you may get to a point where you become a master enough of the process in order to go solo. But I would not encourage anybody to do that at the beginning. Find a shaman. There are shamans operating throughout the West now, throughout the United States. There are Westerners who've been trained in the Amazon who know what they're doing. It's all word of mouth because we're dealing with an illegal substance. But ask around, count on word of mouth, and listen to what people say. And eventually, if somebody feels called to ayahuasca, they will find their way to a safe space to do it. But it's a serious matter, not a lighthearted matter, not something to do recreationally. Anyway, it makes you sick and gives you diarrhea, so who would do it for fun?
Right. What are the odds of Indians in South America finding the combination of the two? Because taking one or the other doesn't do anything. You have to.
That's right.
What are the odds?
Either one alone does nothing for you.
Yeah. What are how did they figure that out? And I'm not being in any way innocent with this. The odds. I have no idea. Winning the state lottery, it would be easier than coming up with that chemical combination.
Exactly. The odds are astronomical, as a matter of fact. They're astronomical. As I said a few minutes ago, rough estimate is that there's 150,000 different species of plants and trees in the Amazon. And you have to pick these two out of that huge mass of different plants and trees, and you have to learn to put them together and cook them with water in order to produce this powerful visionary brew. The odds against that happening by trial and error are actually too high to calculate. Now, it's interesting. What shamans in the Amazon say is that the spirits taught them how to do it. There is a form of DMT in the Amazon which is taken as a snuff. It's called yopo, and it's taken as a snuff, and it therefore does not pass through the gastrointestinal tract. It gets straight into the bloodstream through the nasal passages, and that is rather like smoking pure DMT in the West. It'll put you in a rocket ship to the other side of reality in seconds. And it won't keep you there very long, 10 or 12 minutes maximum. Now, what the shamans in the Amazon say is that their ancestors using yopo were taught by the spirits of this other way to access these realms. They were the specific plants were pointed out to them by the spirits, and they were told to go get them, put them together, and cook them, and drink the resulting brew. And this is what all shamans in the Amazon believe. It's the tradition that the instruction on how to do this came from what they call the spirit world. And it is an amazing feat of pharmacology. Again, I explained this earlier, but the fact is you can't orally activate DMT. There is an enzyme in our stomachs called monoamine oxidase that switches it off. And what the ayahuasca vine contains is a monoamine oxidase inhibitor that switches off that enzyme. It's incredibly clever, in some ways very simple, but incredibly clever. And what the shamans say, and who am I to say they're wrong, their ancestors got taught how to do it by the spirits. The spirits wanted them to communicate. And this actually cross-refers with something that one of Rick Strassman's, not one, but several of Rick Strassman's volunteers said during the DMT study at the University of New Mexico, that when they were on the relatively brief but incredibly powerful DMT journey, in Rick's case, he gave the DMT as an intravenous infusion to his subjects. So again, it went straight into the bloodstream. They met entities who said to them roughly, "We're so glad you've discovered this technology. Now we can communicate with you more easily." And to me, that's incredibly intriguing and very like the notion that the shamans in the Amazon give, that their ancestors encountered spirits who taught them a way to communicate with them, that there's a whole other level of reality that we are involved with, whether we like it or not, and that these techniques, these technologies of shamanism allow us to communicate and to be proactive with that other level of reality. So I think at least as important as looking into the physical sides of the UFO and alien mystery, and I think it's very important that we do so, at least as important as that, we should also be looking into the consciousness side of this mystery and seeing whether there is access to other intelligences through altering our state of consciousness, whether it's not just a simple matter of our brain on drugs at all, but rather a simple matter of accessing the mystery of consciousness.
With the problems that science and physicists have with 11 dimensions and so forth, and parallel universes and realities, and trying to show us that it actually exists. I mean, it's a problematic thing that they're trying to overcome every day. But could this be the reason why they can't prove or access or show? But yet, could this be the access that we need to show that it is real?
I think it could. I think it could be. I think it could be. And the nice thing about it is the experiment can be done. This is why psychedelics are so useful, because you can, particularly with DMT. See, with ayahuasca, where the active ingredient is DMT, there is a certain amount of negotiation with the brew. I mean, you can resist it. You can exercise your will. You can fight to stay in the old familiar state of consciousness that you're used to. DMT normally doesn't allow that level of negotiation. Once you hit a sufficient dose with smoked or intravenous infusion DMT, it's going to take you there whether you like it or not.
Right.
And you will be there for 10 minutes perhaps. So we have a tool here where it is possible, once the person has volunteered for it, to put that person into a deeply altered state of consciousness instantly, right there, then, in front of us, in the lab, if you like. And we can do that with multiple volunteers, and we can compare the notes of those volunteers. We can begin to chart and explore those realms that are accessed in altered states of consciousness and find out once and for all whether they are just individual fantasies, in which case we'd expect them all to be very different,
right,
or whether they are indeed some freestanding alternative reality. I know a couple of guys in the US, I won't say where exactly, who smoked DMT together every night for a year, and they used to, in the desert, and they used to meet each other on the other side. And they used to make a journey on the other side together and explore that realm. And that's exactly what we should be doing with science. Again, we shouldn't be shuddering with fear and hatred at these substances that alter consciousness. We should be embracing them in intelligent, respectful ways in order to explore the mystery of what we are, because that's what we're here to do, I believe, on planet Earth. It's an incredible opportunity to be born in a human body. Why should we waste it just vegetating in front of the TV? You know, we should use our intelligence and the gifts that the universe has given us. And one of those gifts is a whole series of plants that have evolved alongside us that allow us to alter our state of consciousness.
Michio Kaku was on the show, and he was presenting, and I know that we're there. We're very close to being able to download our consciousness and our brain and our memories onto hard drives. We are right there. Dreams, thoughts, immortality, so to speak. We're right there. Why not, in a scientific setting, start to record this?
Yeah, why not? Why not? Indeed. I mean, in a way, that's, you know, if you look at all spiritual traditions, that's what we are. We're the hard drive onto which the consciousness from a previous life has been downloaded. The deal is, however, that you have to forget your previous life. With reincarnation, the deal is you have to forget it in order to learn the lessons from this life. I'm a little suspicious of what is called transhumanism. You know, this idea that that somehow through technology we will, you know, transform ourselves. The idea of personal immortality doesn't appeal to me greatly either, because I am a believer in reincarnation, and I think it's better to come back to cast the lottery of life, to come back in a different body with a different series of challenges ahead of one, rather than, you know, simply trying to maintain this one, whether we download it onto a hard drive or in some other way.
Well, certainly traversing the universe, and we were talking about ET earlier. Absolutely, if you were downloading your consciousness onto something that isn't going to deteriorate, you know, biological, and you are now a machine, you could certainly travel infinitely.
Well, you could, but then you see, arguably, that's, of course, one can't prove that reincarnation exists, although Ian Stevens at the University of Virginia went a long way in order to doing that. But that is the mechanism we have already. If you buy into reincarnation, and I think it was Voltaire who said that it's no more extraordinary to be born twice than to be born once. If you buy into reincarnation, then you are already in an immortality machine. But it's one that constantly allows you to learn new lessons, and that doesn't allow you to build up a massive ego as you might do if you were immortal in one form.
Right.
You see what I mean?
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. Well, when ayahuasca showed you a past life, and again, I want to expand on this when you come back on the show. You can tease us. Why don't you tease me? When ayahuasca showed you a past life, were you Joan of Arc, or were you? I mean, can you share that with us?
I'm beginning to think that I have had a past life during the episode of the Spanish conquest of Mexico. Following a series of ayahuasca sessions back in 2006, I was really strongly impelled by ayahuasca to start writing fiction as well as nonfiction. And the last two novels I have written are a series called War God. The first one was called War God Nights of the Witch, and the new one, which comes out on the 9th of October, is called War God Return of the Plumed Serpent. It's a series of 3 novels. These novels are set during the time of the Spanish conquest of Mexico, and it's a time that feels incredibly familiar to me. And I feel that I engaged some kind of karmic burden at that point, which I am required to put right in this life. The episodes of the Spanish conquest of Mexico, how the Spaniards behaved, how the Mexica behaved in Mexico, the people who we call the Aztecs, the whole mystery and trauma of that epic disaster, because it was a disaster for humanity, bear down on me in a very powerful and emotional way that I hope I've expressed in these novels. I think I was there before. I can't prove it, but I feel very at home in a strange way in that episode of history.
So you're writing fiction, but it's almost nonfiction.
Yes, it's to me, fiction is a great way to explore extraordinary ideas. As I say, I'm writing both. I'm writing non-fiction books about historical mysteries, and I'm also writing novels. This is a new impulse of creativity that ayahuasca brought me. My first novel was called Entangled. It's a time slip novel, and then there's now these two novels in the War God series looking at the Spanish conquest of Mexico. Now, I do research those novels. I have a long background in historical research, but there is this feeling of familiarity, that I was there, that I was part of this, that I am reliving episodes and experiences that I personally went through before, that comes out in this. And getting inside the heads of the characters, people like Cortez, people like his lover, the Native American woman called Malinal, I find they're incredibly familiar to me, more familiar than would be justified simply by research, and it helps me to write about them. I like I say, I can't prove this, but it's just a thought.
What was your point of view when you see yourself back then in Mexico? A soldier, male, female? What does the point of view come from?
Marching up the steps of the pyramid to be sacrificed.
Really? Okay, yeah, that's a whole thing we're going to visit in October. That's wow. Yeah. Okay, you floored me. That was good, Graham. That was good. Okay, let's switch gears a little bit. The subject for Joshua Tree this week is synchronicity.
Yes.
So take us through that. What are you going to be presenting? And you arrived this week. What's your first day of presentations? Is it going to be on Friday or Saturday?
Yeah. So I'm giving a presentation on Friday, which is actually going to be a workshop, which is going to be all about shamanism and altered states of consciousness. That's going to run for 2 or 3 hours. Then the next day, the Saturday, I'm giving a keynote presentation on the subject of psychedelics and civilization, showing that psychedelics have been integrated into the highest human civilizations that we know in recorded memory, whether the ancient Egyptians, their use of the Blue Lotus, and also indeed of DMT, the ancient Greeks, the Eleusinian mysteries were based around the psychedelic potion, and so on and so forth, just showing that actually psychedelics, which we demonize today, were right at the center of some of the greatest civilizations of antiquity. And then on the third day, on the Sunday, I'm giving a very detailed workshop on all my new work on the possibility that there's a lost civilization lying hidden in prehistory. A great advanced civilization, Atlantis by any other name. And I've been all over the world researching this book. I've been in Turkey, I've been in Armenia, I've been in Indonesia, I've been in Australia, I've been in Peru, I've been in Egypt, I've been everywhere. It's a sequel to my best-known book, which was the book called Fingerprints of the Gods that was published in 1995. And there's just overwhelming new evidence now, which I'm bringing out in a new book to be published in 2015. And I'm going to share a lot of that new evidence on the Sunday at Joshua Tree.
One of the things, I don't want you to give away anything. This is my comment. I just want you to comment. Armenia. Armenia is overlooked. And
completely
I don't get it. I really don't get. Armenia is as old as anything else out there, period, as far as civilizations go.
Part of it, let's be honest, is because a terrible, tragic thing happened to Armenia between 1915 and 1923.
Yes.
And that was a giant act of genocide committed against Armenia and Armenian people. More than 1 million Armenians were killed by the Turks in those years, and their lands were annexed and taken. And some of the most exciting areas of archaeological research today, like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, were part of historic Armenia. And that's why, having done a lot of research in Turkey, particularly at Göbekli Tepe, which is a 12,000 plus year old series of gigantic megalithic stone circles that in itself is rewriting history, that's why I felt I needed to go on to Armenia, which is now this very tiny country about the size of Wales, and to look at some of the incredible megalithic remnants that are found in Armenia itself. And it's very haunting to stand in Armenia you can see it from the city of Yerevan. You can see Mount Ararat, which of course fits into the whole story of the flood and survivors of the flood. Mount Ararat towers there in the distance, but now it's the ultimate symbol of Armenia, but now it's in Turkey. I mean, look, I don't want to rewrite history. History is tragic. Many tragic things have happened to many people down the ages. I've got great respect for the Turks and great respect for the Armenians, but a terrible thing was done to Armenia and the Armenians between 1915 and 1923, and that has effectively scrubbed them off the world map. And they need to be put back in their proper place, because Armenia is an amazing country with incredible historical mysteries to reveal.
Karahunj is one of the most amazing things, and it is,
You're giving me goosebumps. You actually know about Karahunj.
I do.
Yes, I was there just a few weeks ago. It is the most amazing place. This huge complex of standing stones, arranged in a snake-like formation. And up above it, a mountain. We went right up that mountain, and there's incredible petroglyphs under the open sky. It's just the most amazing place, and evidence that the Karahunj could be well over 12,000 years old. I mean, archaeologists would like it to be younger than that, but the research that's been done by Armenians on Karahunj, astronomical research, is very convincing of its vast antiquity.
Yeah, and I'm not taking anything away from Stonehenge. I'm not, but it's almost commercialized. Stonehenge is Hollywood. We get
it. Stonehenge is Disneyland.
Yes, it is.
I hate to go to Stonehenge now. I live just 25 miles away from Stonehenge. What they've done to Stonehenge is an abomination. You get there in this horrible little train now, pulled by Land Rovers. It's disgusting. There's no sense of connection with antiquity or mystery at all. It's a completely sanitized experience. A horrible, horrible thing. Karahunj out there is in the wild in Armenia. It's a wild, untamed place. And that's how these ancient sites should be. And that's how they should be seen and should be visited. Of course, Karahunj means effectively
Stonehenge. Yes.
Yeah.
And you just said it, though. Here Obama does his photo op, this weekend at Stonehenge. He needs to be photo opped at Karahunj. Then we know he cares.
I would like, exactly. I would like to see that. And I would like to see the world remember Armenia and know the truth about Armenia, that it is an incredible heritage of our hidden past, and the world owes Armenia a gigantic apology for what was done to it.
Absolutely. And there's nothing, Giza is what it is, and Greece, there are places around the world that are dear to our civilization and our history. But Göbekli Tepe, Karahunj, which are miles apart, this is not, we're talking about a very small geographical footprint here.
Yeah,
there's a connection.
Yes.
That line that delineates Turkey and Armenia didn't exist at one point.
No, it's a false line.
Yes. And Karahunj is quite...
Like many modern borders, it's something that's been imposed rather than something that's organic.
That's exactly right. And Göbekli Tepe needs to... And Karahunj, well, and other sites in this area, but need to be spoken about in the same sentence when we talk about Giza, when we talk
definitely. Definitely. Giza's got great PR, but
well put.
The fact of the matter is that there are these other sites which in my opinion are every bit as important. I mean, Giza is one of the magical sites in this world. I wouldn't take anything away from it. But,
exactly.
But Göbekli Tepe, Karahunj, Aragat. I mean, there's just amazing sites in that corner of Anatolia, of historic Armenia that are going to rewrite human history. And Göbekli Tepe is in the process of doing that right now. And that's one of the things I'll be talking about. And I'll be talking about the other discoveries that we made in Armenia when I'm at Joshua Tree in my long workshop on the Sunday.
I can't wait. I'm going to try to make it out there. I just got back, but it is such a Joshua Tree. I know it's your first time there, but you will see it is a magical place, man. There is something going on out there, and when you leave. This is the thing. When I left Joshua Tree, we wanted to turn back around. We were coming back to L.A., and we're looking at L.A. in front of us. We're like, no, let's turn around. I had a show to do that Monday. That's
Right.
the only reason why I came back to LA. I might still be there.
Well, come over at the weekend. It'd be nice to see you.
Yeah, it'll be great. I've got to thank you for coming on, and again, you'll be back with us for a magical time in a couple of weeks, and I really look forward to it. Graham Hancock.
Me too.
Thank you,
Nice to
Graham.
talk to you.
All the best.
Thank you. Best to you too.
Yeah, I want to say bye in the commercial break. This is Fade to Black, only on the Dark Matter Radio Network, bespoke radio for the masses. Thank you to Graham Hancock. We'll be back right after this. Do follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio, hashtag DMRadioNet. Shoot me an email, Jimmy@JimmyChurchRadio.com. I'll be back right after this. Stay with us. Do not touch that mouse.
Hi everybody, this is Rob Halford, the Metal Guard on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? My name's Brian Taylor, Ninja Badass Extraordinaire, and this is JimmyChurchRadio.com. JJCR, in your face.
JimmyChurchRadio.com. On the Dark Matter Radio Network.
Wow. Oh, man. I feel like I'm high. Graham Hancock, thank you, man. And I had to say bye to him in the commercial break. He's literally getting on a plane in a few hours. So thank you, Graham. I tried to keep him longer, but we're going to be doing a special show in a couple of weeks. So there you go. Wow, that was amazing. God, I kind of feel high. This is Fade to Black, only on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Follow us on Twitter. What is it? I'm tripping. That was Graham Hancock. At JChurchRadio, hashtag DMRadioNet. Did everybody enjoy that? That was incredible. Michael Anderson, I didn't get to the Hawaiian seeds. I just couldn't steer the conversation that way. I tried. Anyway, wow. A couple of weeks, we're going to have Graham back. And there's some things that he wants to expose for the first time out at Joshua Tree. So we weren't going to visit that now. Let him go do his presentation out there. And then as soon as he's done with that, we're going to have him back. And everything that he talks about out there, we're going to do it here. Okay? So there you go. But wow. Woo-hoo-hoo. Okay. A couple of things. I did see Sensei. Sensei Allison. And... this is the thing with I want to address a couple of things and get my mind back to, Ted shut him down, and it was totally wrong. And I wanted to talk about that tonight. And censorship is just wrong, and it backfired on Ted. Completely backfired. If you don't want, the amount of people that went and saw that presentation because Ted removed it was probably quadruple who would normally have just gone and watched his presentation. And it completely backfired. And what Graham is trying to say is fundamental stuff for all of us. And they should have just let it flow. They should have. Ted censored. And we talked about this briefly, but the very foundation of TED is to explore new things. Technology, entertainment. That's what TED is supposed to be about. And you go and you shut somebody down because you invite him to speak, and you know what you're getting, and you invite him to speak, and he speaks, and then you turn around and remove it. It's just wrong. So I guess I'm not going to edit my whispering, because that would be wrong too, right? All right. Graham is always a trip. Good interview. That's from Gene. Yeah, Gobekli Tepe. I did see that flash by. I was like, wow. I will say this. Graham and we were talking this week leading up to the show. And he said, man, we're going to talk about Gobekli Tepe and some other things as soon as I'm done. So I left Gobekli Tepe off the table tonight. He ended up doing it. It wasn't me. But I guess that's the new drinking game. If I had some good dark beer here in the studio, which I do actually in the refrigerator behind me, it did that and had a drink, I would be trashed by the end of the show. But maybe we should do it in real time one day. Should we? Should we do the Gobekli Tepe drinking game? All right. Oh, man, I got to come down a little bit. We've got Kevin Randall here in a couple of minutes. Woo! Okay. All right. You know what? Let's just do this. Let's just fly. Let's just keep this cracking. Let's take a break, and we'll come back, and we'll do Kevin Randall. You guys ready? I'm ready. All right. Let's just do it. Let's keep it going. Robert Knoll says, sure. This is Fade to Black. Great night. Yeah, Gobekli Tepe. Bottoms up. Only on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Gobekli Tepe. Everybody take a swig. At J Church Radio. Twitter. I'll be back right after this with Kevin Randall. Stay with us.
This is William from La Crescenta, and I listen to JimmyChurchRadio.com. Jimmy Church.
My name is Alan, and I listen to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
He's always giving it to you straight.
JimmyChurchRadio.com on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
Hi, this is Rob Reiner from Anvil, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Massey, and you're listening to Jimmy Church Radio, the Revolution.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Fade to Black. Only on the Dark Matter Radio Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, humble host. Let's keep this moving right along. I see that, Ken, by the way. You think I should? Maybe. Maybe I'll do it. We'll see. That's an interesting question. Kevin Randall. Kevin Douglas Randall, prominent ufologist. Within the UFO community, he is often regarded as one of the preeminent experts on the reported crash of the UFO near Roswell, New Mexico, 1947. Professional writer, check this out, more than 80 books to his credit. Randall is perhaps best known for his books about UFOs and Roswell. He's a military veteran. Kevin Randall served in the United States Army in both Vietnam and the Second Gulf War. Randall has studied journalism at the University of Iowa. He earned his master's degree in psychology as well as a PhD from California Coast University and a second master's degree in military studies from the American Military University. I'd like to welcome back our close friend, Kevin Randall, to the program. Hey, Kevin.
Yes.
Do you know you have 17 pages on Amazon?
Well, I know there's a bunch.
17 pages of books.
And the sad thing is, the intro you read with the 80 books, that's like, 15 years old. The total number is like 112.
How many of them are pamphlets?
These are all books. Now, some of them are shorter than others, but they're all legitimate books with spines and covers and everything.
We just did. We just ended with Graham Hancock, and we did an hour of psychedelic drugs. Okay, and you know how Graham is, and that's his research right now into ayahuasca. I'm going to ask you directly: Have you ever done a psychedelic drug?
No.
Have you ever puffed?
No.
Never? Well,
No.
This is funny because I said, with all the politicians today and what is going on with this generation in Washington, D.C., and all of the states now seem to, falling like dominoes and legalizing marijuana, that every politician probably is puffed. And if they say no, that they're lying. I said, I wonder what the 1% is out there that never has. And I guess you fall into that category.
Yes, but I think it's the timing of the situation. Because when I graduated from high school, there wasn't a lot of drugs going on, and I wasn't in that crowd. And I went from high school, I graduated, and 30 days later I was in the Army. And so the opportunity had never been there. So I just never got involved in it. Now, if you want to ask me, do I think marijuana should be legalized everywhere? Yeah. I did one of the things I was doing is I was working on one of the master's degrees. I looked at the history of medical research into marijuana, and it seemed to be stating that there are many, many medicinal benefits to the use of marijuana. And I could never understand why there's this push to keep it illegal. I mean, so I just, but I just never had the opportunity. Now I grew up. What's really hilarious is I grew up in Colorado,
right?
Which is the first state to legalize recreational use of marijuana. So I missed out on all the fun in Colorado.
There's a perpetual cloud right now above Denver. And
it was there when I left, but it was automobile exhaust.
I had read, it was a couple of months ago after the legalization there in Colorado, they actually had like a pot shortage. they ran out of weed at the local pot shops, and I thought that was hysterical.
I understand the crime rate is down.
Yeah, yep, and driving, automobile accidents are down. Ticket writing is down. That is just, it's, I don't even know what to think about that.
Maybe coincidental, but the thing is from the people I knew who smoked a lot of pot, that they didn't drive very fast, and they just weren't really motivated to get into a lot of trouble. So there you go.
The thought of, exactly. You know what, man? When you're drunk, when you're drinking alcohol, you'll do crazy stuff. You'll get on a motorcycle and jump a ramp that you would never, whatever, you just do things that you.
Yeah, I can do that.
yeah. But pot's a whole nother thing. That's a whole nother paranoid. No, you know what? I'm cool, man. I don't need to do that. But
the bag of chips is in a lot of danger.
Right. Okay. Wow. Okay. I didn't mean to go down that road, but we were just, with Graham, after we were done with the interview, I almost felt stoned. I mean, we were just, he is, wow, and he's such a smart guy too. That's the thing. You just hang on his every word. And anyway, we did Roswell week a couple of weeks ago. We came back from Contact in the Desert, and we had all of your old friends on the show. And we didn't have you on. We have you on now, but the point is, a couple of the subjects that we had Jesse Marcel the third on. We had his sister on, Denise. We had Don Schmidt, your old friend, and so one of the things we're going to move on to a couple of new subjects, but I want to visit Roswell because you're the OG Roswell guy. You and Don Schmidt. And you could probably throw Cal Korff into the mix, too, if you want to talk about, old school and of course, Stan.
Well, Cal Korff, unfortunately, doesn't know anything about Roswell. What he knows, he made up.
Right.
Which makes your research a lot simpler if you can just sort of make it up.
He's probably listening right now in India. And watch, I'll see an international call pop up here in a second. I did invite Cal wrote us a letter a couple of weeks ago and said, Jimmy, I would like to come on the show. And I was hesitant. And I just don't want to throw gas on that fire, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. I understand. Cal Korff and I were supposed to debate the merits of Roswell on a radio program, and like 2 hours before the program, I mean, this was all set up a month in advance, and everything was laid out and how exactly it was going to be done and who would be doing what and what the ground rules were. And 2 hours before the program aired, he called and said, "No, I can't do it. I'm busy fighting terrorism." So,
yeah. Well, for the new generation of ufologists and people interested in the subject, probably don't know who Cal Korff is, and so we're talking about him. And we can move on from the subject. I wrote him back and said, you know what? Okay, maybe it's time to bring you back into the fold, and I'll give you a platform to speak. He wrote me first. I didn't write him. He wrote me, and I wrote him back, and I haven't heard back, and it's been about a week. And I thought that he would jump on the opportunity to come back and speak publicly again, but he hasn't written back. So, okay, let's move on from Cal. He's probably listening, and let's keep it clean, so to speak. But back to Roswell. One of the things that I wanted to speak with everybody that I brought on the show was, what is the most important, if you were in court, you're in court, you're F. Lee Bailey, and you've got to convince a jury that Roswell happened. What would be the one, not two or three things, but what would be your evidence bag number one that you would put on the table?
The military reaction that took place, right? It turns out to be a fairly circumstantial case. But the way the military reacted to this discovery and what they did in the time, July of 1947, how they handled it and what they did, I think that makes a very compelling case for something extraordinary going on. And by looking at the one thing they did the day after they announced they had the flying saucer, the newspapers around the country had an article that says the Army and Navy moved today to suppress stories of flying saucers whizzing through the atmosphere.
Right.
The question is, why did they care on July 9th when they had not cared from the point where Kenneth Arnold had seen the things to the point where they announced that they had one? Why suddenly on July 9th did they begin to attempt to suppress the information?
Yep, and I think you and I are on the same page, because what I said, out of everything that's out there, the one thing is that initial press release. That initial press release is the most important to me, because at that point the Army was still honest. that was the genuine article, and they knew what they were releasing. And, prior to that press release, the Washington and the media was still handling the UFO subject and visitors from space as an honest, real subject to be concerned about. And
there was a lot of discussion going on in the papers. There was a lot of interviews with scientists. There were a lot of interviews with military personnel, military officers, about what was going on. Everybody's discussing it. Everybody wants to know what's going on. I think a lot of it, they may have been thinking in terms of interplanetary as opposed to interstellar, but they also may have been thinking as some kind of a Soviet development or something like that.
Right.
They weren't quite as oriented toward alien creatures coming down. But I think that once the thing was picked up in Roswell and they had an opportunity to understand what they had in their hands, suddenly they had to stop speculation. They had to stop people talking about this so that they could move on with what they were doing in secret without having to worry about a lot of espionage and reporters asking hard questions. I mean, why in Roswell does everybody suddenly disappear? You've got all the people that you want to talk to in Roswell, they've all disappeared. Blanchard's on leave. He's gone. He's not in Roswell anymore. Jesse Marcel's not in Roswell anymore. He's gone. The rancher, you can't find him. He's not in Roswell. You call the sheriff. The sheriff says, well, those boys out at the base told me not to talk about it. Talk to them. Everybody you need to talk to get a handle on the story, they're all gone. They've disappeared off the face of the earth, and the reporters can't get to them. Not to mention, back in 1947, Roswell was a hard place to get to. It's not all that easy today.
Right. And we were...
Because of...
Go ahead.
I was going to say, because of where it's located in New Mexico, and even today, it's like 3 hours through the mountains to El Paso, and it's 3 hours up to Albuquerque, and it's 3 hours over to Lubbock. It's kind of isolated, but in 1947, it was even more isolated, and had the event not taken place there, where it was fairly isolated, and the military could control access to it, we'd be having a whole different discussion.
When you and Don Schmidt rolled into town that first day, I'm sure you guys were talking in the car, and the information that you had to go on was from Stan, and because everything was so what's the word that I want to use, young. It was an infant at that point. The information wasn't out there like it is today. So when you guys were rolling into town, what was your frame of mind in Roswell? And then I want two answers. And then when you guys left town the very first time, what was your frame of mind about Roswell?
This is so easy to answer; it's unbelievable. We began the investigation because QFOs had determined there was a lot of stuff that hadn't been talked about, a lot of investigative avenues that had not been followed. And we stayed away from the information that had been published up to this point because you could do so in 1989 because there wasn't a lot of it out there. So we were going in kind of virginally. And we had a number of interviews set up in Albuquerque. We were supposed to talk to Frank Joyce. We get to Albuquerque, and Frank Joyce begs off. He's sick. And I'm thinking, yeah, of course you're sick. You don't want to talk to us because it's bogus.
Right.
We had a meeting with a group of people in Albuquerque that are supposed to know something about us. These guys, I should say these people, guys and gals both, were really New Age oriented. I mean, really far out there, and had absolutely nothing to contribute to the investigation. Their belief structure is what it was. It did not help us understanding that. We get down to Roswell, and we're going to meet with Cliff Stone. He doesn't want to take us to his house for some reason in the beginning. He meets us at a Burger King in uniform, which is bizarre.
Okay.
And then, but his name's in the phone book, so I mean, it's not like it's a big secret where he lived. And then he took us to his house, and he's talking about this stuff, and I realized he is not really helping us at all. So by this time, I'm figuring, this thing's a really bust. We can't get any information. We're getting absolutely nowhere. We're getting the runaround. Nobody's providing anything. The only thing we have left is the next day I had arranged a meeting with Bill Brazel. So we go to see Bill Brazel, and we sit down to chat with him, and everything turns around. The guy is honest. The guy is there. He's kind of an old-time cowboy-like person. And he told us in the course of the conversation. He said, "Well, I told Shirley, his wife. He said, if I like these guys, I'll help them out, and if I don't, I'll just kind of blow them off." Well, Don and I were able to convince him to help us, and so this kind of turns it around. Now we're getting the story from the guy who was there, a guy who was there. Mm-hmm. We're talking to him about what he saw, what he did, what he picked up. It's not third hand. It's not second hand. It's this guy was there and he did this. And so it turns it around. So as we drove back toward Albuquerque to catch the airplanes to get out of New Mexico, I remember we're driving down the freeway, and I said to Don, that we're not done. This we haven't answered any of the questions. We've got to come back. There is something compelling here. We have got to come back. So we went down. We thought nothing to it. We'll investigate. The interviews blew up. Nothing's going on there until we talked to Bill Brazel. He said, yeah, this is good. The next trip down, Frank Joyce was feeling better. We chatted with him. We were able to get hold of the family of the sheriff and talk to them. And we started finding other witnesses. Tommy Tyree, who had worked with Mac Brazel, we found him and chatted with him about what was going on. We were getting information about the 509th Bomb Group and from the officers who were there. We found some of those guys. Jesse Marcel was not the only one. In fact, of Colonel Blanchard's staff, everybody we could talk to about this case said, yeah, it was real, something happened. Edwin Easley, the provost marshal, like the top cop on the base, said it was extraterrestrial to us. The only person who didn't say anything like that was Colonel Barrowclaw. And he said, it never happened, you don't need to talk to me. Everybody else said, yes, there was something going on, and this is what we did. And so it all turned around. But that first trip, the first 48 hours, the first 72 hours, we were getting nothing, we were getting nowhere. And the final day, it turned around for us.
The meeting that you had with Bill Brazel, we want to call him a cowboy, we want to call him a rancher, but I think in a strange way today, it's almost politically incorrect. He wasn't a dumb guy, if you know what I'm trying to say. He's an intelligent guy.
He was a veteran of World War II. He'd been in the Navy during World War II. He wasn't living at the ranch when out in near Corona when the thing happened. He was living in Albuquerque, and he said he saw his dad's name in the paper, and he said, "Well, Dad needs some help. I need to go down there." He got down to the ranch, and his father wasn't there, and showed up either 4, 5, 6 days later. His father showed up back on the ranch, but no, he was not a dumb guy. He was an intelligent guy. He'd been around the world. I mean, he was in the Navy during World War II, so he got around. He was a bright man.
And my point being, and I want to emphasize this, him and his father I just don't want to be so cavalier about this, but knew the difference between a weather balloon and anything else. That's the point that needs to be driven home.
Not only that, the excuse that they use is Project Mogul Flight Number 4. The thing the skeptics and the debunkers will argue with you at length about is that this is what it was, because it was a special balloon, but it wasn't. It was a regular weather balloon, off-the-shelf equipment, but the flight had been canceled. It says right in the notes from the guy who was running the project, Flight Number 4 was canceled. End of discussion.
End of discussion.
And they come to all these permutations to explain how it wasn't canceled and all of this stuff, but the evidence is Flight Number 4 is not a culprit in this. It does not play in this. It's an excuse to lead you in other directions. And here's the real point. Just today, I was looking at a case of engineers who'd seen flying saucers, and I was looking at a case from December of 1953, and I've got the Air Force file, and all the names are blacked out. I figured out a couple of them because they didn't do a real good job of blacking the names out, but they said it was a lenticular cloud. We've got engineers who saw a lenticular cloud, but you read the reports, the thing is in sight for several minutes, and then it disappears. It fades away. It disappears in the distance. And on one of the pages of the report, it's the initials of the guy and the secretary or the typist who typed the actual report up. I got the guy's initials and her name, or his name, I don't know who. And so I'm thinking the guy is the chief flight engineer at Lockheed in 1953. I'm thinking, well, I can probably find out who this guy is because I got his initials.
Right.
It was Kelly Johnson. The Air Force wrote this case off. It's Kelly Johnson and a number of test pilots who see these things, and they write it off as a lenticular cloud. I'm guessing that Kelly Johnson probably knew what a lenticular cloud looked like.
You think?
And it's the same sort of thing. Well, it's a balloon. They say in 1947, don't worry about it, it's a balloon. They reinvestigated in 1996. Don't worry about it, it's a weather balloon. Well, we lied about it in 1947. It wasn't a weather balloon. It really is a weather balloon.
And I just don't think, in my heart of hearts, in my gut, I just don't think Mac would have called the airbase over a weather balloon. I just think he would have thrown it away. That's how I feel.
Absolutely, because it wouldn't have been that big deal. Even if it had been a Project Mogul balloon, and they talk, well, it was a 600-foot-long array, yeah, and there was 10 weather balloons on it, but it wasn't that much debris. It wasn't like it's 600 feet of material, because a lot of it was twine, and of course there was no twine or string found that Brazel found, which makes it very difficult to understand how it could be a balloon. But I mean, the evidence just doesn't fit. But this is where we are now. The Air Force says, well, it's this weather balloon, and that's what it is. Even though the documentation from the time tells you that flight never took place. Ergo, it could not have dropped debris on the Brazel Ranch. And Mac Brazel actually says in the newspaper, I have found weather observation devices 2 other times on the ranch, and this was nothing like those.
Yeah.
If it had been Mogul, it would have been exactly like those.
I just find it so funny. And the more information that we have that we find out every single day, it just fascinates me how stupid the original story is. It's just crazy.
The problem we run in today is all the pretenders. Well, I was in Roswell in 1947, and I saw this, this, and this. Well, no, you weren't, and you didn't. But they get publicity. What was it? Oh, the Roswell rock thing. They did an hour-long documentary on this stone that some hunter had found 25 miles from the debris field that had this crop circle-like display on the top carved into it. Nothing to connect it to 1947. Nothing to connect it to the craft crashing. But here we are just doing all this scientific stuff about it when it's clearly some kind of a freshly made of souvenir.
Right. Well, I have heard. I can't wait to go to Roswell and check this out. But I heard you can buy them in the souvenir shops there. Why aren't they? Why don't they mention that?
There was. Well, they tried, at least on the show, they tried to duplicate it with some guy with his sandblasting equipment, and he did a fairly good job in 30 minutes of creating one. It wasn't quite as fine as the one that they had, but he hadn't refined it at all. He says, well, here's what I can do, and he whipped one out. There was, I think in 1997, in the Roswell Festival in 1997, there was a guy down there selling them.
Right.
So it's I just don't get it. But the case has been so contaminated by all of that sort of thing that it's difficult now to talk about it rationally. You've got to fight through all this minutia that is just irrelevant to the case, like Project Mogul, and it just clouds the issue. And I think that's the whole point of all of this other crap that's being thrown out, is to cloud the issue.
I can talk to you forever. I can just talk to you. We need to do. We need to do like a Kevin Randall month. We'll just block out every night. Too. Yeah. What was now for all the listeners out there? Let's talk about the coin incident. And I've always found this case completely fascinating. And if you're gonna have a witness, if you're going to have somebody, tell you about something, you're going to want an incident like this. It's a fascinating case, but take us through it, because I know you have some new information on the case. But let's start fresh, because a lot of people don't know about this case, and I think it's great that we're going to talk about this.
Well, first of all, it's Army helicopter pilots who see the flying saucer. And the thing that I can say that everybody else that I think has commented on the case cannot say is, I had the same training. Coyne and I went through the same flight schools. We received the same training in helicopters. I understood exactly how he thought. He would understand how I thought. We did not go to flight school at the same time, but we went through the same flight schools and the same training. So I understood exactly what was going on. And I can fly helicopters. I've got, nearly 1,200 hours of combat flight time. So I understood what was going on. But what we got is they're flying back. I guess they're Army reservists, and they're flying back to their base. They've been gone all day, and we used to do this when I was a helicopter pilot with the National Guard. We would create missions and use those missions to get our required flight time. So they had been out getting, I think, a flight physical. So they're flying back toward their base late at night, about 11 o'clock at night. And the guy on the left side, which I would think of as the crew chief, and I think he was the medical specialist, saw this red light off in the distance, and it kind of comes toward them and then flies down that side of the aircraft toward the tail and disappears behind him. So he doesn't think anything about it. So we've got one guy seeing this object go by, and he doesn't say anything because it's not endangering the aircraft. The guy on the other side, which I would think of as the door gunner, and may have been the crew chief or may have been the medical specialist. I may have had the positions reversed because I didn't fly those kind of helicopters.
This happened in Ohio. Or this was.
Yes.
What was the base?
They were based at the I think they were based at the airport, as some of the aviation units are.
Okay.
The Reserve and National Guard units are based at like the airports.
At Cleveland Hopkins. Yeah.
Yeah, in that area.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
So the guy on the other side of the aircraft, he sees the light coming toward them, and he doesn't think anything of it right away, but it's getting closer and approaching. So he mentions it to the aircraft commander, who was Coyne. Coyne wasn't flying. The other guy, Jesse, was flying. And Coyne takes over. He says, "I've got it." Jesse says, "You've got it." And so now he's flying, so he's got his hands on the controls. He's watching this thing as it comes toward it. But now it's coming from the other side. So it's gone down one side of the aircraft, it's looped around, it's come back, it's coming toward them. As they get closer, they think it's going to collide with them. So Coyne puts the aircraft into a descent. And what you do, you lower the collective, which is you operate with your left hand, and you move that downward, and that changes the lift of the blades so that you can descend, and he puts it into something of a dive. This object gets over the top of the aircraft, so they're looking up at it. They're describing this huge thing with lights at both ends and a big green light coming out. Now, Phil Klass said, well, it's because they saw it was green because of the tint at the top of the windshields. And I thought, no, Philip, that's not where the green light was coming from, because in the Huey helicopter, you've got these two plexiglass panels right over the pilot's heads. We called them the greenhouses because they were painted green, and the sunlight would beat in there and cause you to warm up. That's where the light was coming. So all he had to do was look up overhead. He's not looking out the windshield now. He's looking straight up overhead, and they see this big object, and they're trying to avoid it. The object finally disappears in the distance, and Coyne realizes they're not in a dive, they're in a tremendous climb. And he's now, instead of being close to the ground, he's at 3,500 feet, a lot higher than he should be, and the controls aren't working properly because he's got the collective all the way down, and he's still climbing, which is an impossible situation. And Coyne says, well, then I pulled up on the collective, which is counterintuitive, but if nothing else is working, you try what's left. And they felt sort of a bump or something, and then the aircraft controls came back and they could continue their descent. Klass said, well, maybe they were in the climb because Jesse, who was the co-pilot, saw that they were getting close to ground, and he reached down and he pulled up on the collective. I say, as a helicopter pilot who had the same training as those, that would never happen. What would have happened is Jesse thought they were getting too close to the ground, and he felt he needed to take control. He would have put his hands on the control, said, I've got it. Coyne, not knowing what he's seen, figuring that he's seen something that endangered the aircraft, would have released the controls and says, you've got it. That didn't happen. Jesse's not going to reach down and pull up the collective because just because he thinks they're going to hit the ground. He wouldn't touch it without telling Coyne what he's doing, and that never happened. But Klass, who talked to some guy who had some hours in a helicopter, we don't know how many and what training he's had, said, well, that's a possibility. No, it's not a possibility, because these guys went through the same training I did. So you've got this helicopter now being lifted up by this UFO to up 2,000 feet above where it had been in a matter of seconds, which is also impossible for the Huey helicopter. And then the object takes off into the distance, and they regain control of the aircraft. There are apparently a couple of people on the ground who also saw this thing and who've come forward in later years and talked about what they had seen. And the one thing I forgot is when they saw the object coming toward them, they called the local airport and asked if they had any traffic in the area, but the radios wouldn't work, so they'd lost their communications for a short period of time as this object was close to them as well.
I got a couple emails in. Let me see here. You know what? We're going to visit these after. I want to stay on this for a second. What has changed in the story? What have you found out?
What has changed is I looked at the the arguments against it being a UFO, specifically those that came from Philip Glass. And when you read his description of it, he's got a lot of people seeing meteors in the distance that they think are UFOs, and he goes through a lot of this stuff, and he puts his own opinions into the case, but he never really explains what Coyne saw. He doesn't explain how the helicopter went into this climb. So what I've been able to do, looking at it from my training, is put it in a perspective of someone who understands exactly what the thought processes of the guys in the cockpit would have been.
I've looked at the drawing that he drew right after the incident, and it doesn't look like, and especially for a guy like Glass, you can't throw that into a definition other than, flying disc, UFO.
When you look at some of the pilot sightings, and they've seen the object for a short period of time, I mean, a second, 2 seconds, something like this. And you look at some of the videos that are on YouTube now of meteors coming down.
Right.
You can see how somebody who catches something like this out of the corner of their eye would think you've got a lighted cockpit and a row of windows along the side of a cigar-shaped craft. You can understand how that would be their perception.
Sure.
And Glass makes this argument, and it's a valid argument, except for these guys saw it maneuvering around their aircraft for a number of minutes. It went one direction, it came around the rear of the aircraft and came at them from another direction, and then sort of hovered over their aircraft for a period of time. It's not a something of a second or 2 seconds out of the corner of the eye. It's something that they got an opportunity to look at and stare at and see what it was. It's clearly some kind of a huge, as you say, a UFO, a flying saucer type craft with lights on it. Some of the color of the lights is based on them looking straight up overhead through the greenhouses. Glass is talking about it. He thinks it's a green tint on the top of the windshield. Like, remember the old cars used to have those green tints at the top of the windshields?
That's right.
But it's not like that. It's something that's directly over the pilots' heads.
The other thing that I find really curious about the case is the steady green light that he spoke about that was coming off of the back of the craft and pointing down onto the helicopter.
Well, I think part of it being a steady green light was because it was colored by the greenhouses, these green tinted panels above them. But as it moved off, it was clear that it was a white light, a bright white light. So you've got that sort of thing going on. But you've got some other flashing lights on the thing that you can see, but they're not the navigation lights you'd expect from a terrestrially based aircraft. It's not the red and green navigation lights you'd expect, or what we used to call the anti-collision beacons on the back, or as we called them, the rotating targets.
Right. I want to shift. I want to focus on McKinnonville right now. I'm actually clicking to. I can
hear you.
Yeah, I'm trying to get this stuff posted to Twitter really quick so everybody can look at these pictures. Everybody's familiar with them, but we're going to be talking about them right now. Okay, here we go. Right. Okay, that is done. What has changed with the McKinnonville pictures? Now, probably in ufology, I mean, you've probably got 2 or 3, maybe 4 classic UFO pictures, and these are what everybody thinks of first when they think of classic UFO pictures.
There is only 2 explanations. It is either an alien spacecraft or it's a hoax. I can't see a third possibility, given the clarity of the pictures, given what they show. There's no other explanation. It's either an alien spacecraft or it's a hoax. There's no 2 ways about it. So, these pictures were taken in McMinnville, Oregon in May 11th, 1950.
Right.
So you've got cameras that aren't that great. I mean, not like my phone has, a 13 megapixel camera in it, for crying out loud.
Right.
You've got farmers living in McMinnville, Oregon. They see this thing. They get the camera out. They take 2 photographs of it. Then they don't rush off to have the film developed, because in 1950 it wasn't like you could push a button on the back of the camera and look at the photographs right away.
Right.
You had to have the film developed. And I was thinking, when you read about some of this, and again, Class and his cronies have investigated this and threw monkey wrenches into the works here. They said, well, the pictures were taken in a different order. They were taken in the morning instead of the evening, and they were taken in a different order. And Class makes a big deal out of it. If they were taken in a different order, the Trents who took the photographs were clearly lying about it. The argument about the order the pictures were taken, I thought, did anybody look to see if the film was numbered? Because that would end the argument. Turns out it's probably not, but since they were given the time frame, they may have been cut apart, the negatives cut apart by hand, so you could put them in order and deduce what order they were taken if you can get the original negatives. But I now learn that Class may have overstated the case, and the pictures may not have been taken in an order different than what the Trents said. And we look at a lot of this stuff about those photographs. Just last year, a French group looked at it and said, well, we think by digitizing these things and looking at the pixelization that we think there may be a thread holding this thing up, but we're not sure. But the most likely conclusion is this is a hoax. Based on what? You don't think there's alien visitation, ergo anything that shows a spacecraft or a possibility of a spacecraft must be a hoax. You have no real evidence proving it's a hoax. You just think it may be a hoax based on your latest study of those. And I think Brad Sparks has refuted a number of those points as well. So it's, here are some very good photographs. I find nothing that suggests to me it's a hoax, which is not to say it's not. It's just to say I don't see anything that's obvious about it. And in all the years that this has been studied since 1950, no one has really come up with the idea that it's a hoax. In fact, the Condon Committee, when they studied it, said, this is, we don't think it's a fabrication. We think this is a legitimate photograph of a UFO. The photographs are legitimate, which then makes you ask the question of the Condon Committee, well, if you have pictures of a flying saucer, why do you determine that there's nothing to be learned by studying UFOs? I mean, you haven't explained these pictures. And so there's been a real attempt by the skeptical community to explain the pictures. And it gets back to like the Project Mogul. The Project Mogul has got to be the answer for Roswell, because if you don't have Mogul, you really don't have an answer for that. If you cannot prove these photos are a hoax, you really have no answer for what they show. And some of the things Class was saying, well, I checked the weather, and when the pictures were supposed to be taken, it was perfectly clear according to the information from the weather bureaus. But when you take a look at the information from the various airports around the time, it wasn't perfectly clear. So he's overstated the case. And once again, it cannot be, therefore it is not, as opposed to, this is very interesting. What might we be able to learn if we study this a little bit more? Can we show it to be a hoax? Now, the thing that always gets me is, I think 99% of the pictures of flying saucers have been taken by teenage boys, and 99% of those are hoaxes. But we have some very good cases. McMinnville, I think, the Lubbock Light photographs of the object in the V formations, of the lights in the V formation. I talked to Carl Hart Jr. He took the pictures when he was 19, and that was 1951. I talked to him in 1993, 1994, so he was in his 60s. And normally when a teenage boy has faked a photograph, they come clean eventually. And I talked to Hart, and what he said to me was, I still don't know what I photographed. So you've got some very good photographic evidence here that's not explained, which is not to say it may not be explained, and in and of itself doesn't prove we're being visited by alien creatures, but it certainly takes us a step in that direction.
Well, when you look at the McMinnville photographs, there's about two or three things that you have to understand when you're looking at the photographs. Number one, Providence says it's 1950. That's a big part of these photographs for me, the dating of it. This wasn't 1965 when flying saucers had been talked about a zillion times. We're talking about 1950 here. Roswell came and went, and whoever snapped these pictures in 1950 probably never even heard of Roswell at that point. And that's something that needs to be discussed. The second thing, when anybody talks about these being strung, from a string and being hung, I'm talking about the McMinnville photographs specifically. It's clearly off into the distance. If it's strung from something, it would be strung from a helicopter. There's nothing around it to suspend it from, and especially at that height. My eyes look at this, and it's clearly what it is. It is a saucer off in the distance, high in the sky. And not only that, but there's multiple photographs in this series. It's not just one picture. And that needs to be discussed as much as what's in the photographs themselves.
Absolutely. You've got two photographs of clearly a disc-shaped object. And measurements made by, like, Dr. Bruce Maccabee suggest that the object is some 30 feet in diameter. Well, that's not a fake. I mean, that's not something you create and you hang from a wire to photograph. The thing with the French study is, if you look at the way they've tried to explain it, you have to have two objects. One of them is 5 inches in diameter, I think, and the other one is 6 inches. For their analysis to work, to show that it's a hoax, you have to have two separate objects, and that's just not the way it is. It's one object. They took the two photographs, and they only took two photographs because it was 1950 and film was expensive and cameras weren't that great. I'm sure a lot of the people have never had a camera where you had to wind the film forward. 35 millimeter cameras, you had a little lever that you pushed and it wound the film. But this would have had a knob on it, so that you have to slowly rotate the film and watch through a little window until the number comes up on the back of the film, the paper on the back of the film, so that you know where you are and you can frame the photograph that way. It's a bellows camera. You pull the bellows out from the housing, and that sort of thing. So you're looking at that. You're looking at, well, you needed to get the film developed. You didn't take it to the local store and have the film developed in 60 minutes or less. You took it to the store. They probably did not process it there. They sent it out, and it might be a week or 10 days before you got the pictures back. So you know what you have. The other thing that's important also is Trent thought they had photographed some kind of a secret government project. He didn't think he had a flying saucer from another world. He thought they had a secret government project, and he was a little bit concerned about getting into trouble for taking a photograph of it. So he wasn't really excited about having people see the photographs. But they never gained anything from it. They got a trip to New York, I think, on one of the old-time TV programs to talk about taking the photographs. That's all they ever benefited from it when they took the pictures.
When you look at, we had Joe Fex on the show last week, and his collection is absolutely insane. What is it when you look at, and I love the old black and white stuff. I think it's the most legit. Well, because it's analog. You're talking about negatives and film, and there's no CGI.
You can't manipulate it with your computer easily.
You can't. And so for you, what stands up the most? What are your favorite photographs?
Well, McMinnville, of course.
Right.
The Lubbock Lights, simply because there's no explanation for them, and it's a V-shaped formation, and there's four photographs in the series, and nobody in the time frame was able to duplicate it with the suggestion of it being birds in formation and that sort of thing. The birds at night would not reflect enough light that you could photograph them the way Hart did. So those are very good photographs. I go back and forth on the Heflin pictures. That's the
you go back and forth on Heflin.
I've read some stuff where they've shown what is it? I think model railroad wheels that look an awful lot like the pictures. Yeah, and I don't know enough about the dynamics of that case to be sure about it. There is one of the pictures where it looks like the UFO is down the road from where Heflin is, and it looks like it's stirring up dust underneath the object.
Mm-hmm.
But That one bothers me a little bit, I guess. But Heflin,
Rex Heflin's pictures, to me, I think are just about the strongest evidence. And when you look at the train wheel idea, now we're talking, I don't know, but we're talking a lot of weight. And I don't know.
No, it's a model railroad wheel, not a full size wheel.
Well, I've heard a real train wheel too as well.
No, that's not a real train wheel. I mean, I can buy a Lionel train wheel on a string. I can buy that because that wouldn't be that hard to do. Although I think on was it Fact or Fake, the Paranormal Files, they tried to fake it that way and couldn't duplicate it.
Right.
Duplicate the pictures. So there's that, and Heflin talked about guys from NORAD coming and picking up the photographs from him and the negatives. I mean, they were a Polaroid camera, but you get a negative from a Polaroid camera. Pick that stuff up, and guys from NORAD wouldn't have done that, which is not to say guys didn't come and visit him and claim to be from NORAD. It's just guys from NORAD didn't do it. And we've had some of that as well, where people misrepresent themselves as military or government officials to talk to witnesses or gather evidence. The other thing, I think the movie footage from Montana, Great Falls, Montana.
Oh yeah.
Nick Mariana and
yes.
his the two lights, and they go behind the water tower and over an air conditioning duct or something on top of a building, and then Tremonton movies taken by Newhouse, the Navy officer. I think, but the thing is, the Great Falls movie is 1950. Tremonton is 1952. McMinnville's 1950. The Lubbock Lights is 1951.
Mm-hmm.
We go to 64 to get to Heflin in his pictures, but we're looking at stuff that's 50 years old.
Do you know who's got the Heflin pictures? Did I ever tell you that?
Ann Druffel?
Yep. Ann Druffel. And she said to me on this show, I'm going to imitate Ann Druffel. She goes, Jimmy, if you want to come over to the house, I'll get the box out and we'll have some tea and I'll let you look at the Rex Heflin pictures. I'm like, Ann, you are the bomb. You are the bomb. She's so cool. She lives down the street too. And the fact that I haven't taken her up on that offer and gone over there to check those out in person. But yep. And they're safe. They're safe. You don't have to worry. And
she's produced some very interesting commentary about the pictures that refute the idea that it's a train wheel. I guess she knew Heflin pretty well too.
Yeah, she knew. Well, she's got the pictures.
Yeah,
she's got them in her possession. So I want to do this really.
The drawings, the Glenn Dennis drawings of the aliens in Roswell.
Yep, she's got those.
I have the original.
Oh, I thought she's got those. You have the original Glenn Dennis drawings?
Yeah, I have the original.
How did you procure?
Everything else is a copy that I probably made and gave to him.
How did you?
I've got the originals.
How did you procure those?
Glenn Dennis gave them to me. Right. You can see where they well, it wasn't he. It was a guy named Walter Henn, I think, who actually made the drawing. But you can see where they've taken white out and kind of changed the way the fingers look. I mean, it's an illustration, so it's not a problem that they altered it to make it more accurate as they saw it. But
when were the drawings done?
Oh, I have the impression they were done sometime after Jesse Marcel talked in 1978.
Okay,
I think they were done in the 1980s.
Okay,
so the drawing was done in the 1980s.
I've got a few questions. I've got a few questions here that have come in for you. First one, this is from Lou. Do you have any comments on Chase Brandon's claims?
I do not believe them. I cannot believe you'd be wandering around the CIA library or storage area and there'd be a box labeled Roswell. I think the label would have sent something else. It wouldn't have sent Roswell. And I think that would have been it. And it would be in a very highly classified area, and you just wouldn't be wandering around pulling stuff down to look at, because when you get into a level of classification that high, especially when you move into the top secret arena as opposed just to secret or confidential. When you move into the top secret arena, the access to the material is very, very controlled. So I just don't find his story to be credible.
Do you have any thoughts on these new Midland pictures?
You mean the slides?
Yeah, the slides.
I fear is going to turn into alien autopsy light. And the stumbling block right now, and you've got to applaud Don and Tom and those people for being very careful about what they say about them and trying to complete the investigation properly without a lot of ancillary stuff going on. So they're trying their best to do exactly what they need to do to validate them. But the problem that I see is they don't know who the original photographer is. And that's the problem. If they can somehow tie the photographs to a specific individual, then they've gone a long way to validating the slides.
Have you seen them?
No.
Do you know anybody besides Don that has seen them, or Tom?
Yes.
And what have they said? Everybody's being so cautious with this. I can't seem to get a straight answer out of anybody.
I think the reason is they're looking at how the alien autopsy played out.
Right.
And all the controversy surrounded that, and finally it all blew up at the end when the guy says, "Yeah, I'm the one that made it, and here's pictures of us making the aliens for the alien autopsy film." And I think they're trying to avoid that, but they have the one problem, which is the provenance of the original film. I know what they're supposed to look like. I've had them described to me. I know a number of people who have seen them.
But I can see you're hesitant to go on the record.
No, it's not that I'm hesitant to go on the record. I don't want to do anything that's going to damage the investigation.
Okay.
And when I first learned about these things, Tom and Don had been approached by the guy with the slides, and to get any kind of cooperation with the guy, they had to say they wouldn't tell anybody about it. I learned about it from other people, and I eventually had to write a long letter to Tom to give to the guy, explain how I learned about it, because he figured that Don or Tom told me, and they didn't. And so he wanted to know how I found out about it, and I actually found out about it from Nick Redfern. And once I learned that Don and Tom had access to the material and the information, I backed off. I said, I'm not going to do anything to screw up their investigation. That's their providence. I'm going to let them handle it, because I know how these things can blow up on people. And some of that has gone on. But it's not that I'm hesitant to go on the record. It's hesitant. I'm hesitant because I don't want to do anything to damage their investigation before they complete the work.
Yeah, and I don't want to either. We're talking about everybody's friends here. You know, we all know each other and we respect each other. I get that. So let's back up a step again. And I'm going to ask the question again, though. I'm going to push you on this.
Okay.
The person that did see the slides, how did they feel about what they were looking at? And I know that you asked them, directly. What'd you see?
On some of them that I have talked to who've seen the slides are quite impressed. But the problem is there's nothing on the slides in the photographic frame. I mean, they've looked at the coating on the slides, the 35 millimeter slides, of course. There's a coating on the film that tells you the year of manufacture. The problem is Kodak recycled the codes. So you can say, well, the film was either manufactured in 1927, 1947, or 1967. Doesn't put it, and even it said like it was 1946. I mean, that wouldn't be a big problem with it, because you buy some film and you don't get it all used up. But So that doesn't really prove anything. They need a chemical analysis of the slide, the way it was developed, what the construction of the elements of the slide material is, because that would narrow it down to, especially because the formula for creating the film stock and the formula for developing it in 1947 would have been different than 1927 and different than 1967.
Mm-hmm.
With the alien autopsy film, Kodak said they could tell you what year the film was developed, but they needed a strip of the film, and they wanted a strip of the film with the alien on it because there's a specific rate of shrinkage between the sprockets, and they could measure that and they could determine when the film was developed. I'm not sure a 35 millimeter slide has enough sprockets that you can make that kind of a determination.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But there's all these sorts of tests going on, and the guy that's got the slides is very hinky about it, and that was why he was almost not going to talk to Don and Tom anymore, because he thought they had told me, and they hadn't. I got some of my information from Nick Redfern.
With the person that saw the slides that you spoke to, what specifically was in the slide? There's two slides, correct?
There's two slides, yes.
There's two slides.
There's a body lying on a gurney.
Right.
There's a hand-labeled sign that's at an angle, so that they've been trying to determine whether they can read anything on that hand-labeled sign, to give them some idea of maybe it gives you the date the pictures were taken or where they were taken or something like that. They've been unable to decipher that, but the sign is sort of covering what you would consider the genital area of this creature. It's a humanoid creature, and that's really about all I know about it.
And the other picture, or are they both?
They're both of the same, apparently of the same creature. Just taken at slightly different times. Well, obviously at different times, but.
And the what I'm looking for the word. The supposed date is it 1947, 1948 when this picture was taken?
According to the information I've gotten, the slide frame, the cardboard frame that Kodak would put on it, is appropriate for the time frame, 1947. The coating on the slide itself, on the film stock, well, it could be 1927, 1947, 1967. So the coating is correct.
Is it possible to? I'm assuming, is it possible to buy or find old film and just shoot something?
Absolutely.
So what would that prove? I mean, it would prove that it's
itself. No, that's what I'm saying. That doesn't prove anything. But if you get a chemical analysis of the film stock, you get a chemical analysis of the chemicals used to develop the film, because the formulas for that stuff changed. That would give you a much better picture of when the slides were taken and when they were developed, or when the film was made and when the slides were developed. I had a friend, Russ Estes, and we were talking about this when Gerald Anderson's diary came out, and they were analyzing the ink and all of that stuff. And so we got to talking and some of that, and I was visiting Russ in California, and we went into his workshop area and looked around a little bit, and we found, because of his work in documentaries, we found ink that would be old enough, and a pen that you could use for the ink to make it old enough, and paper that was old enough, so we could have created something like that.
Mm-hmm.
We had the wherewithal to do it,
mm-hmm.
but we had to look around for it. And that was one of the things that tripped us up with Frank Kaufman when he created some of the documents about the Roswell case. He had paper from 1947.
Mm-hmm.
And so he could type this, and he had a couple of old typewriters in his house.
Right.
And after he passed away, Don Schmidt, Mark Rodiger, and Mark Chesney, I think, and maybe Tom Carey, and maybe all four of them, were asked by Kaufman's widow to make sure that there weren't some contractual obligations he had, and so they were going through his office. They found a stack of this paper that he had, from 1947 that buy war bonds, and he had a couple of old typewriters that still work, so he could create the documents with the proper time frame, with the proper ink, with the proper paper.
Didn't they find like some test copies or like some attempts at documents? Didn't they find some part?
No, I don't know if they did that. When we started checking out the office symbols, we found the office symbols were wrong. They were organizations that didn't exist in 1947 and all of that sort of thing. So some of that was wrong. I think the Easley signature on one of the documents was not right. And we found, I guess they found the original documents that he used to kind of copy from.
Right, that's what they found. Right.
So he
mimicked the documents.
Yes. Yeah, precisely. And that was some of the things that have gone on with the MJ12 documents. You find these wonderful documents and they seem to fit the time frame, but then you find the original, and all the people have done is change some of the wording a little bit to plug MJ12 into it, but for the most part, the document is all historically accurate. And that's what he did, was he had some letters, and all he did was add his name to a couple of places and change a date or two, or add a sentence that became critical. So a lot of that had been going on.
Yeah, I find that when I look at any document, when it's like that, you could possibly, not possibly, very easily recreate a letter or a single page, type it out until you get it correct without any mistakes, like a typist would back in the day. They typed without mistakes. But when I look at the manual, when I look at that operations manual for retrieving a foreign disc, you look at that manual and you see how it's laid out, every single page, the typefaces, the instructions, and how that is done, page after page after page after page. I find that manual to be real. I can look at other stuff. If you're going to fake a White House letterhead with a Truman signature on it, okay, all right, get yourself some letterhead, and you can find your way through it. But when you start producing or trying to copy a manual like that, when I look at that page after page, because I did it for years. I did graphic design for years. I know what it takes. That is accurate and real. There's nothing about that feels funny to me.
There is one problem, though. The seal on the front is from the War Department.
So?
War Department didn't exist in 1954 when the manual was allegedly created. It was the Department of Defense.
I thought the War Department was in Sacramento.
The manual was created, I think, in 1954. The War Department didn't exist in 1947, or in 1952 or 54 when the manual was. The War Department went away when Truman consolidated all that to the Department of Defense.
Right.
And the Air Force was born, so you wouldn't have a War Department seal on it. It would say Department of the Army, or it would have said Department of Defense, or Department of the Air Force.
Could it have been a mistake? Possible.
At that level?
Well, I'm just saying the body, the content of what's inside that manual. When I look at that page after page after page after page, not only that, but the layout, but the verbiage too as well is different than any other document.
Here's where you run into problem on the manual. There's no provenance for it. Where did it come from?
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're looking at a question document, that's the big stumbling block right there. Where did it come from? Can I go to the government with a FOIA request and get a copy of this document? And I can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
As an example, Project Moondust. I think Cliff Stone told me about Project Moondust, and he had all these pages of Moondust material. And he said he got them from the Department of State. So I FOIA'd the Department of State, and I got I think 10 microfiche. He had 15. They only sent me 10. But I could go to the Department of State and I could get those. Then as I'm looking through the Project Blue Book files, as I was working on government UFO secrets, I'm scanning the microfilm, and I found 4 cases grouped together in September 1960, I believe, that the cards in the Project Blue Book files actually say Moondust. So there's a provenance for Moondust. We can show Moondust existed. We can show that it had a UFO connection. But when you get to something like that manual, I can't get a provenance for it. I don't know where it came from.
There's so much work put into it. That's the thing. You would have
absolutely.
I have, it would be an insane amount of work for somebody to do one page that's different, but it's complete. And there's a lot of work that went into that. I've read every single page. I've looked at the layout, and I know as a graphic artist what it would take. And then you have the other side of the fence. You have to have somebody writing that stuff too. So that now you have a conspiracy. It didn't come from one person. It's not somebody with a typewriter sitting, in a back room of their house somewhere clandestinely cranking out fake letters. That now we're talking about work and binding and everything else. That's I don't know, man. I think out of everything, that just feels real to me, and it reads real.
And Don Berliner is the guy who received it.
Yes.
And he believes it's faked.
Yes, I know.
Okay.
But look,
I understand what you're saying, and that's one of the things. Going back to the McMinnville pictures, it's sort of the same thing. Did these people, Paul and Evelyn Trent, have the wherewithal to fake this sort of thing? What would be their motivation to fake this sort of thing? And it didn't take hours and hours and hours to do it, but it took some effort to do it. And you wonder why would they do something like that?
Yeah,
back in 1950.
See, this is the thing. This is serious, Kevin. Today, graphic people and everybody, it's a different world. We have computers. Anybody can crank out a document. But to do a manual like that, back then, you have to do manual typesetting. Typesetting was an art back then and very expensive. Okay, to lay out type on a book, on a manual, on a pamphlet, for a company, even business cards, that stuff was expensive to do, and you had to do it with intention. You had to, when you were putting stuff together like that, you had to go through all the stages, the negatives. You had to do your darkroom work. You had to do your typesetting. You had to do your waxing. You had to cut your galleys up and lay things out page after page after page after page to get them. And that, when I look at that manual, I see that type of work that went into that. I'm saying it's legit. I really do. It's not faking a letter.
I will tell you that I worked in graphic services at Rockwell International for a number of years.
So you know what I'm talking about.
So I know all about making photographic plates. I know all about the way you have to, the way you wax it up and you lay it out on the paper and you adjust it and you fill in the lines with your X-Acto knife.
The X-Acto knife and a straight edge. Oof.
Yes,
sir.
And the big black squares where the photographs go.
Mm-hmm.
So you can insert the photographs. And screening the photographs, people don't understand.
Half toning, yes.
Yes, that back in the day, the photographs were. If you look at the really good ones, they're with a magnifying glass. You can see the dots in it.
Yeah, half tone.
The crappy ones you can see it with your unaided eye, but the really fine ones you've got to get down there with a magnifying glass to see the
dots.
See the dot matrix that puts it together. So I'm familiar on how all that stuff is done.
There would be piles of evidence somewhere. There would be galleys. There would be typesetting. There would be negatives. There would be inner negatives. You would have the plates that everything was printed from. There's just such a chain. There's a press somewhere that made those. Then you have the bindery involved, and it's just a big complex thing to create something that isn't real. I don't know. Like I said, one page, a letter, and you want to slap in Truman's signature on it, okay, and recreate it with an old typewriter.
Not only slap Truman's signature on there, we know what document Truman's signature came from.
Yes, right. That manual.
And you can see on the T from Truman, you can see where the line is not straight and even, where they had to use the whiteout to take out the letter.
Yeah, you can see
Truman,
the
dips in there, because Truman historically, when he signed his name, the T went up into the text of what he was signing, and you can't really find anything that he signed himself without the text, the T going up into the text. So somebody took that and they modified it and they slapped it on that document. But that's a whole other argument.
I got to thank you for coming on the show. We're at the end. Hey, what have you got going on right now? Are you finishing another book? By the way, 100 books. So in the last 30 years, I did the math. That's 5 books a year.
Oh, it's even worse than that.
That's impossible.
At one year, I did 19 books.
That's insane. Don't you have a family?
Yes. I made the joke that I was, I couldn't have done it without a computer. I made the joke that I was in the Book a Month Club. But some of them, I did some books on the Navy SEALs, which were stories that, it wasn't accurate. It was stories, fiction, using the Navy SEALs, which, by the way, are not, some of them are now as ebooks at Amazon. But and they were like 60,000 words. So I wrote one in a weekend. I've got one book that I've been working on for 25 years, and I still haven't got it done. but some of them are easy. Some of them are not so easy. I would do 30 pages of copy a day. Fortunately, my wife had a job.
Exactly.
And I didn't, so I could write books. And now I'm semi-retired, and I write books a lot slower. I'm doing sort of a follow-on to Government UFO Secrets. And the thing that really annoys me is people don't understand that there's a lot of new stuff in Government UFO Secrets that hasn't been talked about. And, I tried to change the history of the modern era of UFOs and move it back away from Arnold and incorporate some stuff that was going on in Europe the year before, stuff that was going on here with flying discs prior to Arnold. It was Arnold's sighting got the publicity, but there had been stuff going on prior to that nobody was really talking about, and how the government has manipulated all that information. And as I said, I just today was working on the thing with Kelly Johnson, and the government wrote it off as a lenticular cloud. And I'm thinking, geez, Kelly Johnson couldn't have been that dumb to mistake a lenticular cloud. But they slapped a label on it, and they were happy. And you go through the Blue Book files, and you see all these stupid explanations, and you realize that there's an awful lot of manipulation going on, and there's a lot of good stuff buried in the Project Blue Book files. So the new book is kind of looking at all this stuff. The McMinnville, I do a long discussion of McMinnville in the new book. But in Government UFO Secrets, there's a lot of stuff that's been talked about in the past. I look at the Japanese airliner, the Japanese airliner case from 1985. But I got to talk to the Callahan, who was the FAA guy that investigated it. So I got it from his point of view. I didn't, this is the guy that got the information, and he's, looked at the radar tracks and all of that stuff. And
right.
I had an opportunity to talk to him and put it down in the South American pilot that fired on the UFO. And I asked him the question that's always asked. They say, well, he fired on it without any evidence of it, any without results. And I asked him, well, did you hit it? He said, yes. He saw the bullets bouncing off. So that stuff is in there, but these cases get sort of overlooked as we move along. So the government UFO files, they've got a lot of stuff in there about what I found in the government files of the United States and other countries, and talking to people who were involved in these sorts of things.
We've got a wrap. You're going to hang with me while I read credits, because we ran to the bloody end. So just stay with us, Kevin. You can say goodnight at the end. Thank you to Graham Hancock and Kevin Randall. Stay tuned. Coming up next is The Unexplained. Special thanks to Keith Rowland and Art Bell. Fade to Black's executive producer is Rita Kamarian. Show is produced by Hilton J. Palm and Mark D. Kovar. The announcers are Steve Harder and Mark D. Kovar. Tomorrow we got a new guy. Music is by Doug Aldrich. Show intro is performed by Spaceboy. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Dark Matter Radio Network. I'm your humble host, Jimmy Church. Dr. Randall, say goodnight.
Good night.
I'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
See you, everybody. See you tomorrow night.